I'd like to welcome everyone to the Columbia Heights Public Schools Independent School District 13, Columbia Heights, Minnesota, board meeting for Tuesday, February 16th, 2016. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if you would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you and welcome again. We'll be starting off our meeting tonight by swearing in our newly elected board member. So Natty, if I could get you to come over this way with me, please. Just have a short thing that I'll read and then we'll swear her in. A board. Start on page one. Okay. It is an honor that you were elected appointed to guide the education of our community and our children. As you recite the oath of office, you assume a tremendous responsibility as a director of our school district with the duties empowered by the Minnesota legislature. This power puts you and the other members of our school board in the position of being both morally and legally responsible for equitable, quality education of every student in the district. In carrying out this responsibility, you will be asked to fulfill the roles of vision, structure, accountability, and advocacy. In providing vision, the board, with extensive participation of the community, envisions the community education future and then formulates the goals, defines the outcomes, and sets the course for the public schools. To achieve the vision, the board establishes a structure and creates an environment designed to ensure all students the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. Because as a board, we must be accountable to the community. We must ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement in all conditions affecting the education of our children. As board members, we serve as education key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision of our schools. Furthermore, we must strive to work together with the superintendent and the staff to lead the district toward fulfilling the vision we have created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills and knowledge, citizenship, and personal development. Having signed the acceptance of office and the oath of office, you will please publicly affirm your commitment by repeating the oath of office after me. Okay. I, Natty Severson,
I, Natty Severson,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
and that I will discharge faithfully
and that I will discharge faithfully
the duties of the office of the school board member
the duties of the office of the school board member
of Independent School District Number 13,
of Independent School District Number 13,
best of
Independent School District Number 13, the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations and welcome to the board.
Thanks.
It's been a long wait. We're happy to have you here. Ted, if you would please call the roll.
Severson.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Larkin.
Here.
Palmer.
Here.
Landwehr. Here. Superintendent Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. Our mission statement: Columbia Heights Public Schools creates worlds of opportunity for every learner in partnership with supportive small-town communities by challenging all to discover their talents, unleash their potential, and develop tools for lifelong success. Our core values are community, excellent, collaboration, integrity, respect, courage, and innovation. And speaking of unleashing those talents, next up on the agenda is our Highlander highlights. And tonight, the board will honor the recipients of the Minnesota Scholastic Arts Award from the Columbia Heights Public Schools. You guys are going to listen to me read a lot tonight, I think. With 90 years of history behind and a bright future ahead, the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards has grown to be the nation's longest-running, most prestigious recognition initiative for creative teens and the largest source of scholarships for young artists and writers. Since 1923, the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards have recognized the vision, ingenuity, and talent of our nation's youth and provided opportunities for creative teens to be celebrated. Each year, increasing numbers of teens participate in the program and become a part of our community. Young artists and writers, filmmakers, photographers, poets, and sculptors, all along with countless educators who support and encourage the creative process. Students across America submitted 255,000 original works during our 2014 program year. Of those, Minnesota entered 2,900 pieces, the largest submission year we have had to date. The awards are presented by the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers, whose mission is to identify students with exceptional artistic and literary talent and present their remarkable work to the world through the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. Students receive opportunities for recognition, exhibition, publication, and scholarship. Awards alumni employ their creativity to become successful in any number of ways. Leaders in fields including journalism, medicine, finance, government and public service, the law, science, design, and more. Student submissions are blindly judged by leaders in the visual and literary arts. Jurors look for works that exemplify the award's core values: originality, technical skill, and the emergence of personal voice or vision. And I would like to ask, Diane, would you like to come up and kind of talk a little bit about, or whoever you want to bring up?
Hi, I'm Diane Scully.
I'm Dane Hodges.
Steph Novak.
Principal Robleski.
So this is Scholastic Art Awards, and I'd like to encourage you to come to the exhibition. It's going on through Saturday, and Dan will talk about that. But Dane teaches pottery and photography. Steph?
I teach at the middle school. I teach everything.
So this is the first year that the middle school has entered into Scholastic, which is awesome because it goes from 7th through 12th grade. And to say the least, we rocked it out this year. Okay? So we have 35 pieces from 21 students.
And Chair Larkin, members of the board, Superintendent Kelly, I'd just like to thank our teachers for their hard work and dedication to our students, and to let our students nurture their talents. As you can see here, some of them are presented in a PowerPoint right now. And I want to congratulate those who are here tonight. You make all of us proud in Columbia Heights for the work and the dedication you have shown us tonight. I'd also like to let everybody know that this Saturday, 9 a.m., our students will have 21 students will be represented from Columbia Heights with their 35 pieces. Starts at 9 a.m., and it's at the Regis Center on the University of Minnesota West Bank. And the award ceremony will be at 3 to 4 p.m. over at the Wiseman Museum on the East Bank. And one thing that I'd like to point out is, as we talk about the Scholastic Awards, for a lot of us, when we talk about high school activities, we think of the state tournament. And winning, being part of this is going to the state tournament. And to have 21 of our students represented at this event is quite an accomplishment. So I'd like to thank the students again.
And to give you some information, there were 4,500 entries this year, and they're juried blind, which means that there's 3 jurors, and they have a red paddle and a green paddle, and they don't talk about the work, and they hold up their red or they hold up their green. If they hold up their green, it moves through, and they jury. First of all, they're in different categories, so all the way from fashion design and architectural drawings to painting and photography. And so it runs the whole gambit. Steph was a facilitator this year for painting. I was a facilitator for the portfolios. So there were 168 senior portfolios. And so that means that the kids have to submit 8 works. And then they can submit those 8 pieces individually also. So you'll see some of the seniors like Tiana Dyer, who got gold keys last year. She got gold keys again this year. And so she is one that's going to go to the Art Institute School and does not have to pay very much to go there. So they are adjudicated until they get through the honorable mentions, and then they decide the silver and the gold. So about 60% of the works don't even make it to honorable mentions. So honorable mentions are a fabulous award and something to strive for in years to come, especially since some of them are only 7th and 8th graders.
And this is only the second year that we've entered works from the middle school. And last year we had a silver key winner, and this year we have 3 honorable mentions.
What do I say? So this is one of the first years that I know of, at least in quite some time, that we've had pottery accepted into the show, which is really good considering we're going up against schools that have probably 3 times the budget in ceramics, and also against students who, and against students who are able to take ceramics for 8 semesters. So the 2 students that got accepted into this awards, the Scholastic Awards, they had only been taking ceramics for 2 semesters, and were able to achieve honorable mention, which is pretty impressive. So it shows their dedication.
All right, well, with that, we will honor with certificates the students that are here tonight. So when we call your name, if you would just come up here, Casey's going to want to get a picture. So. Michelle Johnson. Michelle is recognized for receiving an honorable mention at the Scholastic Art Show. Whitney Meyer. She's recognized for receiving a gold award, 3 silver awards, and 2 honorable mentions. Congratulations. Oh, I'm sorry. Erna Osam, help me out, huh?
Erna Osman.
What he said. Come on up, please. Come on up here and help me with all those. She's recognized for receiving a gold award at the Scholastic Art Show. Congratulations. Claire Pearson. Claire is recognized for receiving a gold award and an honorable mention at the Scholastic Art Show. Lisette Heder. She's recognized for receiving an honorable mention at the Scholastic Art Show. Eula Searing. She's recognized for receiving an honorable mention at the Scholastic Art Show as well. Oh, there you go. Sit the crowd. Adler Burton, recognized for receiving 3 honorable mentions at the Scholastic Art Show. Did we miss anybody? Yeah. Oh, okay. I need Zach. Come on up, Zach. Zach is recognized for receiving an honorable mention at the Scholastic Art Show. Last call. Is that everybody? I will let the other board members speak for themselves, but Diane and the other staff, if you would make sure when you go back, congratulate all the students that were recognized for all of their hard work. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. What's that? Okay. Oh, guys, before you run away, Casey wants to get a picture of you out there, so everybody together.
He stopped the door.
Huh?
He
It's got
stopped
that
at the door.
funnel thing there going, so.
See ya. See ya.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward. Next up is the agenda approval, adjustments, announcements, and correspondence. First up would be the approval of agenda. If I could get a motion to move that forward, please.
So moved.
Laura, thank you.
Second.
Molly, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Announcements, February 23rd, Tuesday at 7 p.m. will be a regular school board meeting. Also on February 23rd will be a school board work session immediately following the regular school board meeting. March 8th, Tuesday at 5 p.m. will be a subcommittee on policy. Also on March 8th, Tuesday, 7 p.m. will be a regular school board meeting. March 15th at 5 p.m. will be a school board listening session. March 15th, Tuesday at 5:30 will be a school board work session. And March 21st through the 25th, there's no school spring break. Next up is correspondence. Superintendent Kelly.
Mr. Chair and members, there's no correspondence at this time.
Thank you. Communications to the board. Citizen employee representatives. At this time, any citizen or employee may briefly address the school board. The board will listen to brief remarks, ask clarifying questions, and if desired, request that administration follow up. The board will not take action at this meeting on requests presented at this time. Is anybody here? Okay. Next up is the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the January 5th organizational meeting, the January 12th and 19th school board meetings, and the January 28th special call meeting, the personnel report, and the treasurer's report for December 2015. If I get a motion to move that forward, please.
So moved.
Molly,
Second.
Laura, thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Motion carries. Discussion reports, information items, reports from members of the board. Board members will report on board activities since the last regularly scheduled meeting at the Board of Education. Ted, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Sure. Thank you. I had the pleasure of attending the Valley View PTO meeting. Again, a great turnout, and I understand their book fair was very successful. So hats off to them, and hats off to the Valley View community for a great book fair and a great event. Also attended several WEMAP meetings, Finance Committee, Executive Committee, and a board meeting. And I guess we'll have further discussion on that later on in the agenda. Had a meeting with Superintendent Kelly. Thank you very much for that. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Laura?
Well, let me see. Attended a couple of board meetings, a couple of canvassing meetings. It's probably been close to a month since we've had a regular board meeting. I also attended the band from the bands from the academy over at the high school. They sounded so amazing. If you haven't had a chance to go to the high school and see the bands perform or the choirs perform over there, the acoustics are so much better than the gymnasium. You have got to go. They sounded absolutely fabulous. They're doing a wonderful job there. I also attended a 916 board meeting. Couple things. One is that we have a new member that joined the 916. That will be St. Anthony. So I think we're pretty well full up now, but pretty much everybody that we're working with, and I see that we're going to be doing some special collaboration with St. Anthony and New Brighton. So it'll be great to have another level there to facilitate that. We also got an update on the site for the new Capitol View building. They have settled on I've got some paperwork here. I actually want to give this to Dawn, if we could get it in the board packet, some of the facilities plans. And let me see. Oh, there's a program visit on March 2nd. So if anybody wants to attend that over at the Career and Tech Center, that's out by White Bear Avenue, I believe, White Bear Lake. If you want to go, contact Dawn or get a hold of Connie Hayes or Linda over at 916, and you can certainly attend that meeting. But you do need to let them know so that they know who's coming. And I attended the listening session earlier today, and we do have the listening session so people can come in and, just sit down and chat. So just keep that in mind. We're here the third Tuesday of the month before a school board meeting and right here in the Family Center. There's always 2 board members and some staff, and usually the superintendent also attends. Come on in and talk with us and let us know what's going on, or just stop by to say hi because we get lonely. And I attended the chair meeting just prior to this meeting. So that's pretty much it. I rattled it off real quick, but there, a lot to say.
Thank you. Molly?
Thank you. I had an opportunity to go to the Youth Appreciation Night at Columbia Heights High School. That was a few weeks ago. And it was really good to see the gym packed with a lot of our younger Highlanders. So that was a wonderful night. Thank you to the Booster Club for putting on the dinner beforehand. Also, of course, attended some of the boys and girls varsity, junior varsity basketball games. Was over at Highland for conferences earlier this week. Attended the canvassing meeting prior to this. I had a chance to meet with Superintendent Kelly. Thank you again. And I just want to mention, I wasn't able to attend, but I heard wonderful things about the academic honors night that the Columbia Academy put on. Was that last week, I believe? Was it
Monday.
A week ago? Yes, thank you. And so just kudos to the administration down there for recognizing all of the good things going on at the academy. That's it. Thank you.
Maddie?
Thanks. I've spent some time down at the district center getting to know some staff. That's been really excellent. It's been great to get to know you, meet you all a little bit better. Superintendent Kelly gave me some of her time, which was really nice. I feel like I'm learning. As you can imagine, plenty of constituents have found me in the last couple of weeks and expressed different things, so it's been a learning curve coming on and doing this. I actually attended the academic night at Columbia Academy. It was awesome. There were over 200 students recognized for being on the A and B honor roll. The 6th graders, there were, so many of them standing up, and it was really a great time to have it. Many families were there in spite of the date change, and the gym was full, including both sets of bleachers and the floor. And Zena, my daughter, really appreciated your Spanish. She loved it. Thank you for doing that. I also attended conferences at North Park and a 5th grade band concert at North Park. It was great to see all they've accomplished in just having instruments in their hands for a few months.
Okay, thank you. It has been a while since our last meeting. Just to touch on the listening session piece, the next one is March 15th at 5 p.m. So if anybody's interested, please feel free to come and chat with us. I attended the candidate forum, the most recent candidate forum. I was at the canvassing meeting, the first canvassing meeting, EMSD, the listening session, canvassing meeting, chair meeting tonight. I attended college prep night here last week. It was well represented with a lot of different schools to talk to. I also was at the middle school band concert, and they were amazing. And I was sitting with Superintendent Kelly, and the first song they played, I said, God, I hope they didn't play their best piece first. And they didn't. By far, they did not, every one of them. They just did a phenomenal job. Had an opportunity just before the band concert to sneak over and watch some of the wrestling. And then tonight, the girls' basketball, I kind of stuck my head in over there. I was watching them play for a little bit, too. So, and that's all I have to report. Next up would be Superintendent's Report.
Well, Mr. Chair and members, I know the board always likes to be caught up on what TIES is doing, and I want to let you know that TIES came out for a customer service visit. They sent out 2 reps. We're going to have our own service team and our own service point person, so we were introduced to that person. They gave us updates, and they have made some changes based on our feedback. They asked for additional feedback, and so it seems like we're pointed in the right direction. In addition to the organization being in the black, they have really made, they've narrowed their scope on services and products, and they have narrowed and eliminated the gap on the bottom line. So that's a lot that they have done in a year. So kudos to all of them, and we look forward to working with our service team and the meetings and opportunities they're planning for us. Director Holmgren and I met with Springstead to begin discussions on our annual satisfaction survey. For those new to the board, we do a satisfaction survey that talks about how we're doing and kind of asks the community to give us a grade, and also to dipstick some of the critical issues that might be on their minds. And so in order to get that done, we had an initial meeting. We're hoping that we can get something back to the board by the end of April so that you will have some feedback on what that is. A lot of work went into the initial questions, but as you know, so we can compound data over the course of a span, we want to make sure that we're asking some of the same questions every year so that we can look back and have a 5-year view. Principal Sosik has also been involved in helping us shape the survey this year as part of his learning for his superintendent's license, and it's going to be fun. Tomorrow morning, we're going to take a look at the survey again, so I want to acknowledge Principal Sosik, who's in the audience. The Bridge team has been charged with developing recommendations for the former Castle Heights playground site, and they have been charged and they will begin meeting. Director Holmgren has contacted the Cunningham Architectural Group, and that firm has agreed to facilitate a charrette for around the charge that the concept that you all approved, and so that will be open to any and all that would like to attend that. I am not chairing that committee, as you know. That will be left to Mary Rose Granlin and Principal Michelle DeWitt. And if there's any confusion, I want to make sure that when the committee meets or when the charrettes happen, that is open to any interested community member. So if you have additional questions on that, you could contact either one of the 2 chairs. I attended the WEMAP Joint Powers Board meeting with Member Landwehr on February 10th, and there'll be more information regarding that meeting on the agenda later this evening. Planning and design development continues for the all-purpose performance studio space at the high school. If you can remember, in the fall, one of the major charges that were put in as part of my goals was to develop out a space in the 100 hall of the high school that could be all-purpose, because we really do not have enough with just the PAC in the community. And so we have been doing research by going out on what I call field trips, but basically looking at all kinds of different designs. This afternoon, The architects were in to show us what we think the design concept will be, and once we have the renderings, we'll be happy to share those with the board. And we're going to be on a tight timeline with this because we would like to get the renderings ready, go into production, and have it ready for kids in the fall. So it's a tight timeline, but I think it will be a great asset to the whole K-12 system, as well as the community. Administration, of course, is still involved in evaluation of teachers and staffing district-wide. And like all of you, I've attended multiple school board meetings and events, but I would like to thank each and every one of the school board members at the table because I had an opportunity to meet with each one of you on a one-to-one in the last three weeks, even from today back 3 weeks. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for your time, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next would be item C, revised 2015-2016 budget, and Director Holmgren.
Chair Larkin, members of the board, Superintendent Kelly. It's time again to look at our budget, revise it. As you know, each year we do a revised budget when we know better what's going to happen by the end of the year. I want to touch on the mission. We've already talked about it tonight, but we are here to create worlds of opportunity for every learner. We look at our core values. When we're talking about our budget, we're talking about community, we're talking about integrity, we're talking about excellence, and of course, collaboration. So since last May, if you remember last May is when we put our budget together, we took our best guess at the time. Legislature actually wasn't quite finished, but we had a pretty good idea of what was going to happen. But what happens, of course, we don't know who for sure is going to work. We know the positions. So now we've inserted our actual employees into the budget. We've adjusted all our revenues to our current enrollment. And of course, positions that were hired as needed were put under careful review to make sure we really need those positions before we put them on. So the things that really have changed since last May, well, I think we'll just mainly go through the highlights, and if you have any other questions, let me know. But WEMAP is something that really has affected our budget. As you know, WEMAP is no longer running any schools. And what happened in the past is we had actually 38 students that went down to a WEMAP. And what happened is we still collected the revenue on those students, and then we paid tuition back to WEMAP. Okay, so our revenue has decreased by $272,000. That was the revenue we received for those students, but of course, we're paying that much less in tuition. So it's kind of a wash, but our total revenue has dropped since it was last May. Other things that have happened, after the legislative session, we got a little bump in our compensatory dollars. They increased the formula a little bit, so that really helped us out going into this year. The ALC, if you remember ALC, the number of students that we anticipated along with District 916 was too low, so our revenues really looked too short last summer after our year end had finished. Again, we spent less too, so this is really kind of a wash also, but less revenue overall going into the budget. But of course, when the legislative session was done, we actually got 1% higher than we anticipated in the budget. So then we got $277,000 back. So we have things kind of bouncing up and down as we talked about this budget. And of course, one thing that did happen to us this year is we have 2 new elections we had to account for, and that's about $30,000. That by the time we get to the bottom of those, 2 elections with the primary and an election. So actually 4 elections. So let's talk about revenue as a whole. Our original budget had a little over $32 million. On the revised budget, of course, is down 31, and that's down because of those revenues that are less in WEMAP and less for the ALC. So we're down $272,000. In the restricted area, that's where the compensatory fits in. You see an increase there. There's also some health and safety that's in there. We got the actual end values to the health and safety projects. Food service, we're actually serving a few less students this year, so we're down about $17,000. That's mainly in the elementary side, and if you remember last year, we had kind of a drop in our kindergarten, so we have a little bit less students going through our elementary grades at this time. Community ed, actually that one's up a little bit with some new revenue from the state of Minnesota. When we look at the expenditure side, again, we're spending less money, and that gears back to the WEMAP. So we're down $228,000 overall in the general fund. When we look at our restricted, again, that's where the compensatory hits, that and the some health and safety, and actually there's a little bit of bumps we saw both in our title dollars and our special ed. Our special ed students that we have counted this year are up actually over 40. So that's some of that's hitting there. Food service, we are spending a little bit less there. That's some savings we're seeing already from CIDXO. I think we're going to see some bigger savings here, but until we get through that first year, it's a little hard to anticipate exactly where that's going to end up. And of course, community ed, we actually added some programming, so we're spending a little more money. So we got more money, but we're spending it, so it's about the same when we get to the end. Now, in your packet, page 36 of your packet, you'll see a summary. I put the summary up here too, but it gets pretty busy, pretty hard to follow. I think your handout I gave you is a little easier to follow. Well, we'll just quickly run through that. Very first line, the unassigned fund balance, that is where the majority of the dollars go, and that's the dollars we use for educating our students. And you see we have a balanced budget, bringing in $31,800, spending about $31,800, so we actually are gaining about $8,000. And of course, you know how that goes. That varies quite a bit from year to year. It might be, up or down a little bit, but we plan to have a balanced budget. Gifted and talented did not change. Of course, we do spend all the gifted and talented dollars we have. We actually spend more than that. When you look at that dollar, that's just the revenue that we receive. So then we expense that same amount in that coding for gifted and talented, but we spend quite a bit more through the elementaries and the middle school and the high school when we talk about gifted and talented programming. Staff development, we're spending a little more than we're receiving in our staff development. That's, if you remember, our new peer reviewers, most of those salaries are coming out of there along with the staff development that we do. So that fund balance is dropping just a tiny bit. Grants, of course, we spend what we bring in. If we get a little more, we always spend a little more, and that's how it works. It's a reimbursement type process. So if we spend the money, then we reimburse the same amount that we pay. So that's always exactly the same in and out. Compensatory dollars you see are up to almost 7.5 million. That's a pretty hefty number that we're kind of getting dependent on. Deferred maintenance, dollars that we receive for deferred maintenance projects is that $190,000 that we're spending there. And then, of course, we have our operating capital balance there, and then health and safety. And this is going to look a little different going into next year. Health and safety, the label is really going away, and we have that new revenue, long-term deferred maintenance revenue. We're taking the deferred maintenance and taking all our health and safety, and they're combining it together. So you see a little bit a different labeling when we get into next year. So this is the last year you're going to see the health and safety. Again, you see a negative number for health and safety at $268,000. Don't be alarmed by that. That is levy covers that, so that always comes a year later. So then we jump to food service. Pretty much balanced there. Look like we're going to underspend there a little bit by about $30,000. Total community education, we should underspend there around $85,000. And that's practically where we were last year, just for a heads up there. Our building fund, as you know, our new capital project levy runs through the building fund now. So you can see some bigger numbers in our building fund. That's for the capital projects levy. Debt service, you see a little negative number there. If you remember, we can levy every year 105% of what we need, just in case someone doesn't pay their tax bill. So in this case, that money gets given back to the taxpayers in an under levy in the following year. Flex account, we run our employees' flex dollars through our district. That's just a wash in and out. Same with dental. Dental is we are actually self-insured. When we look at our dental programs, all the money comes in and out of the district. Student activities, you see about $220,000 that they raise and spend on a yearly basis. So actually quite a few dollars raised for our athletic and our activity programs. And then, of course, we have our OPEB trust there at the bottom. Spending that down a little bit. I think we're a little conservative. Not necessarily. We'll have the OPEB our team come in and present to us here in about 2 months to see what's going on in there. But as you know, our market's been a little tough here the last few months, so I wanted to be conservative enough here. I think that'll come down a little bit this year. So all in all, that's what we're looking at for our revised budget. I guess, is there any questions?
So just to summarize, it seems like the 156,000 decrease in our fund balance is mostly due to the health and safety that we're
Yeah,
not being able
that's
to levy?
going to be due to health and safety, and that will be recouped a year later.
Okay. So actually, it's nothing to really be concerned about.
Yeah, I think, the number that I really look at very hard is that very first line on your handout. That one needs to be balanced. We don't want to be overspending in our unassigned areas. That gets kind of ahead of you. You spend a little bit too much one year, it really grows the next year. So that's where most of our money's in our staffing, and that's where it all sits up there in the top line.
So we're not using up our fund balance at all then, according to this?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely the plan is not to use any of it. I think I really want to come to you with a conservative budget. This is more conservative than it was last year. We were down a little bit last year in our fund balance. And I really think that the 7,900 that I'm showing there, that's actually a low spot. I think we'll have a little bit more. But of course, that's totally dependent on the kids we have at the end of the year. And that goes up and down, and sometimes we see a lot more down this time of year. So we really won't know until we get to June.
Other questions? Thanks, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Next up is the 2017 year budget consideration. Bill is center stage again.
Yeah, we want, as we're looking at the new budget, now we're going to talk about 2017. As you know, we're looking for efficiencies in our budget, trying to bring a budget to you here in May that is balanced and something that we can afford. And of course, we always are looking for some place to save some money. So what we're going to talk about tonight is something that the board has told us to do over the last few years. I want to just show you kind of how it's acting and give you something to chew on as we go into this budgeting cycle. And what it's about is the weight room down in the Highlander Center. The board has asked us to run this program no matter what, no matter if we're losing money or not losing money. And I just want to so you know what's going on in that program. I think we're losing more money than we anticipated, and just something for you to consider. So first of all, in fiscal 2016, the year we're in right now, to run that program down there is going to cost us $15,331. Since we haven't quite collected the full year this year, I took an average of the last year, and that's we collect $600. So you see that we're short $1,870 this year, which the general fund will have to subsidize because we're short on those revenues. And here's what we've subsidized back to Fund 4 the last 4 years. In Fund 4, the money's going back to Fund 4 because community ed actually runs that program, so all their costs come out of there. So anything we're short, then we fill that gap. So I just wanted you to be aware of the dollars that we've been short on a yearly basis. You can see that it's growing, meaning that we really don't ever collect any more dollars, but our costs always go up every year. So you can see that even back in 13, though, almost $12,000 that we were short. So this is just one line in the budget that I just wanted you to be aware of. I wanted you to consider it if that's something maybe we want to cease, but maybe not. So it's certainly that's up to the board, not up to me. So I just want to let you know about it, and that's the only reason I'm bringing it to you today.
And we're doing this, from the way I understand it, is we're staffing the room for students?
No, this is for the community after hours. This runs from, I believe, 6 p.m. till 9:30 p.m.
So this is the community education fund that we're not balancing, so we're taking it out of the general fund, which is for students.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back when we opened the buildings, back in 2009, the board had told us at that time, we're going to keep this room open no matter what, and that's what we've been doing. And I just want to let you know the kind of dollars that have been lost there.
So just to clarify, for summertime, for the children that are participating in sports, it would not affect them, nor would it affect the after-school hours till 6 p.m. for our students?
Correct.
Do our students tend to go to the weight room after 6?
If you go down to the Highlander Center after 3:30 p.m., it's full. There's some group, there's some team, either in the gym and in the weight room, back and forth, every single day. Very, very, very busy, kind of quiets down around 6 o'clock. And then I believe it's right at 6:30 that they open the...
6:30 to 9:30,
Yeah.
and it's just for adults.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
And-
what we're talking about is the adult, that the general fund supplements. Community ed covers the cost for the youth.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to say that, and because back in 2009, some of you may have been on the board and others may not have, the reason we're bringing this one position over is because the board actually voted to put this position in. And so I think Bill is saying we'd like to put it forth for you to consider, perhaps to either suspend for a year or to cease and desist with it because for cost savings. But we really would like a vote of the board on this, which is different than our usual staffing. And it's because the board took the vote in the first place.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have something?
That was my question. Would another option be for the community to pay for the time to raise the fees?
Well, first of all, the community does pay. The fee is $10.
Right.
It's a smaller amount if they only come a few nights during the month. We don't believe that if we increase the fee, we would increase, I think we would lose people, so we actually wouldn't generate any more revenue at all.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah. So that's what we're feeling at this time.
$10 a month or what?
Yes, it's $10 a month if you want a membership, and you can come, any day for the $10 a month. So it's actually a very good deal if the community wants to come use it. Very good deal.
My understanding is that we've made a concerted effort to advertise what's available as well.
That's correct. So it's open Monday through Thursday in the evening for 3 hours and then Saturday morning. It's $10 a month for Columbia Heights residents, $15 a month for non-residents. We've publicized it on the cover of our community ed brochure. It's in our community ed brochure each time we send that out. So we have done a lot of things, and we've also on our boards out front reminded people about it. We typically have 6 to 8 people that sign up for it.
There are days of the week, are Saturdays busier, slower? Do you know, have you tracked any of that?
We haven't taken attendance, but our numbers haven't increased in terms of the number of people, and you purchase it as a monthly membership as opposed to a daily use.
Right.
Does this include the exercise equipment as well?
Yeah, the weight room, of course, has weights in it, but yeah, we have ellipticals, we have treadmills that they can use, and those have all been upgraded. Those are brand new just over the last 2 years. So the equipment's in very good condition if someone wants to come use them.
Would they be able to use the community, does the community have a weight room, exercise room as well, still?
No, this is the community weight room
Well, no,
that's used
they
at
have
night.
one at the community. They
Oh,
have-
yes. On the community side of the Highlander Center, there is another exercise or a weight
Okay.
room that's open in the mornings. I'm not sure how many people they get there, but there's usually always somebody parked there using it. And they are open in the evenings, too. They don't match our times exactly.
Okay. So if there was a need for this or demand, they could possibly use the community exercise room.
Yeah, and I could double check on what those times are on the community side.
Is there, not to belabor, but is there a way to find out if like Saturdays are busier? Is there an option of,
Well, we can certainly take some attendance the next couple weeks.
see if it's even worth pursuing? But, I certainly would like it to be available to people if it's a little more cost effective, but right now it's kind of a big hit for.
Yeah, and that's why I'm bringing it to you, because it's getting bigger and it is it's a big piece.
As long as you're going to be seeking information and bringing it back, could you also look at the hours that the community side
Yes.
is open versus?
We'll look at attendance on our side and we'll look at the actual hours on on the other side.
Thank you.
Would it be all right to put that in the update so that you have that?
Are we getting Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions or comments for Bill on this?
I do have one. What do people pay to go to the community side?
Oh, that's another question we can answer. I think it's pretty similar, but they have a lot more drop. Is there somebody here?
Yeah, so community is open 5 days a week, 9 a.m. to 11. They're also open on Saturdays, and it's $1 when you walk in the door, and someone is there to collect the $1. And then to answer your question, John, Saturdays on average, I probably have never seen more than 4 people in our weight room on Saturday or late in the evening after I get done with an event.
Do you know about what their hours are in the evenings? If not, Bill can look into it, but I thought if you knew it off the top of your head.
8:30.
I know it does open at 6. I don't know what time it closes.
That's fine.
Though, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll look for some information in the
Yeah,
update
I
then.
will definitely get that information together and get it to you.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
sir.
Thank you.
Next up is summer programming, and Dana, Kristen, Marcia, and all kinds of people here.
Summer programming.
Summer programming.
Chair Larkin, members of the school board, Superintendent Kelly. We come this evening to present a list of the activities that will be happening this summer as we anticipate the summer season coming up. We create worlds of opportunities for every learner in partnership with supportive small-town communities by challenging all to discover their talents, unleash their potential, and develop tools for lifelong success. And certainly our summer programming continues the mission statement as we do throughout the school year. The values that are particularly highlighted with our summer programming are community, and you'll hear a lot of collaboration with community, excellence, collaboration, and innovation. Some of the goals for our summer programming that you'll see and hear as we present about the various programs that we supervise are providing math and reading interventions, opportunities to earn high school credits, English language support, opportunities for fitness, services mandated by individual educational plans, and opportunities for enrichment. With community education, we have a number of programs that we will continue to provide as we have in previous summers. Our Bridges to Kindergarten is the 3-week program that happens in August. That'll start August 1st this year. And it's a 3-week program, 4 days a week. And this is for supporting our students, mostly the students who haven't had an opportunity to have an early childhood experience, to prepare them for the routines and rituals of kindergarten. In the past, we've had 2 classrooms at Valley View and 1 classroom at North Park. This year, we'll be having the 2 classrooms that typically are at Valley View. We'll have those at Highland instead, and then the 1 classroom at North Park. But each classroom really serves the specific elementary school that the student will be going to. We'll have our Adventure Club program again, and that takes place consolidated from the 3 elementaries. That takes place here at the Family Center, and that enables them to really do a lot of programming out at Blooming Heights. Our Mini Adventures program is a year-round program for 33 months through 5 years of age, and that continues here at the Family Center. We'll continue our 2nd year with the Blooming Heights High School internship. We had a great experience last year with some of the high school students really delving into the time in Blooming Heights. Our teen drivers will get strong with their skills and safe on the road through driver's education. And then we continue to offer our fitness classes, our adult enrichment classes throughout the summer so that no one gets out of shape in this community during the summer months.
All right, so for activities and athletics this summer, I'm going to start off with our strength training. And this is offered 7th grade through 12th grade. And we offer 2 sessions in the morning, Monday through Friday. And we, on average, the last couple of years, we're averaging almost at that 100 student mark, which is really great for our students to wake up and get some activity and some exercise and get stronger for the fall season. And along with that, Coach Townsend does a football camp at the end of July. With that, we have about 45 students participate in that. Swim and dive, my head coach plans to do a camp this summer to get our both genders in the pool, and that will be offered 7/12. Volleyball camp, the last couple of years we've done a volleyball camp, average about 15 to 20 athletes. I would like to see more athletes involved in our volleyball camp. And then gymnastics camp is the end of July for 2 weeks, and we run that in our main gym. That's offered 7 through 12 also. And then fitness classes. Did you want to talk about fitness classes?
I think that was what I had mentioned as well.
Okay,
So a
got it.
lot of this is collaboration that happens between our two departments.
Sure. Thanks.
In student services, we'll be offering the same special education programming that is mandated by IEPs and determined by IEP teams. We will be offering this summer our extended school year programming for grades 1 through 6. We will be offering our developmental, cognitively delayed, and autism program. We will also be offering early childhood special education programming. And we also conduct early childhood special education home visits during the summer, along with our English language home reading program. And then the projected number of students attending those programs are listed on the slide.
For general education, we will offer elementary summer school program, and we typically have around 300 students attend. We'd like to see a few more attend this summer if they qualify and if they need it. Middle school, typically about 135 students attend middle school summer programming. And then high school summer programming, as you'll see in a couple of minutes, Director Hallaby and I were able to work and collaborate with 916 and bring high school summer school. We do work with 916, and 916 runs the program, but we will house it here in district this summer. So we're excited about that. Some of the enrichment programs, engineering camp, and then boost camps for our students in advanced placement. And then summer seminar, which is a collaboration between the St. Anthony New Brighton School District. So as you can see, we have a very busy summer from June through August when we start up again next school year. Adventure, and you can see most of the buildings will be very busy as well. So Adventure Club will be located here at the Family Center. Summer Academy, which is a collaboration of metro area districts that offers a 3-week program for gifted and talented students in elementary, middle, and high school. That's located at the high school and next door here at Highland Elementary. Our secondary summer school programming will take place at Columbia Academy again this year. Our elementary summer school will be housed at North Park. The change in location is due to construction in the parking lot of Valley View, so we wouldn't be able to have kids or staff come in and out during the summer. So we will be housed at North Park this summer. Director Stunkel mentioned Bridges to Kindergarten listed there. And then there are various dates for the athletics and activities, all of the different offerings.
Questions or comments from anyone?
I actually just do have one question. Could you go over a little bit about the collaboration with St. Anthony and New Brighton? Oh, never mind.
Yep,
Okay,
I'll be
we'll do
presenting on
next.
that momentarily, absolutely.
I just had one quick question about that. I'm sorry, is this something you're presenting on too? I don't know. When you talked about 916 taking over the teachers or the summer school at the high school, is it going to be the District 13 teachers? Or will it be a combination? I know there was some stress last year about that.
Correct. They will be offering priority to District 13 staff so that our teachers can teach our kids. And then we're collaborating on what that curriculum will look like and how the instruction will be delivered.
Wonderful.
Really positive meeting about summer school with 916 in the last few weeks.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
I just have a comment that it's great to see that our buildings are continuing to be used over the summer and not just sitting around. So that's great. One thing that I've read is that there's some debate over whether summer school actually helps to make gains in students' learning. I'd be interested to see, if we could evaluate that and see if it really is a good use of our time and facilities. Just a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the summer seminar collaboration with St. Anthony New Brighton. Zena?
Chair Larkin, members of the school board, Superintendent Kelly, I will provide you today with an update on the summer seminar collaboration with St. Anthony and New Brighton School District. Our mission is to create worlds of opportunity for every learner, and this presentation will focus on community, excellence, and collaboration. So starting off, what is Summer Seminar? We want to learn more. So it's a collaborative partnership with St. Anthony New Brighton School District, which is an adjoining district. It is a class, a co-teaching model, which we bring together one teacher from Columbia Heights and one teacher from St. Anthony New Brighton, and they teach a combined group of students who are kids going into 9th grade. It is a 5-week course that has a major focus on academic writing. So why are we offering Summer Seminar? It's a really important transition year to offer summer school for kids going into 9th grade. These are students who will be going into advanced courses, so the Columbia Heights students are students who have been selected for AVID, and so the expectation there is that they need the extra support and they will take an advanced class. The same with the St. Anthony students, they will go into an advanced class in high school. To prepare students for college and career readiness, to collaborate with a neighboring district, and to comply with the achievement and integration rule. And it is funded, this program is funded through the incentive aid portion of that to comply with an adjoining district. So I wanted to provide you with a snapshot of one of the field experiences that the students got to go on. You can see the 2 teachers and the group of students. Let's see if I have it here. We ran the class over the summer for 5 weeks, Monday through Thursday, with a focus on writing. But they also included the theme of kind of the sense of identity and sense of community. So this is a photo from an excursion that they took to not only the Mill City Museum to learn a little bit more about the history of Minnesota and the Twin Cities, but they also visited the memorial of the bridge, the 35W bridge collapse. So really, then they come back to class and write about their experiences. In addition to this experience, the kids made a long list of the places in their own communities that they wanted to visit. So, Heights Theater and Huset Park from our kids, and the St. Anthony kids also made a big long list. And so during the summer, they were able to really have that true cross-district collaboration and experience, and got to go see each other's. We just lived down the street from one another, right? So I mentioned the students who are participating in the seminar program are in the academic middle. They will be enrolled in AVID and an advanced class. And then, again, a collaboration not only of students but staff as well. So this is what the entire program looked like. So the design of the summer seminar, even though the title says summer, it's really a wraparound program. We wanted to make sure that we're following the students and not just providing them with a summer experience and then be done with them. So The summer program was for 5 weeks last summer. And then this month we did a mid-year check-in where the St. Anthony students came over after school to this room, actually. And so for those of you not in this room, we've got windows that you can see when the St. Anthony students drive up, and you should have heard the kids in this room seeing when they arrived, and they were so excited to see their friends from St. Anthony. They've also played sports against each other, and they're just so thrilled when they go to the other school and, at a volleyball game, for example, and they get to see one another and reunite. Then we are planning a 3-day kind of experiential learning to kind of tap into the experiential learning that they had over the summer, over spring break, where the teachers and other chaperones would take the students to college visits. So we're talking about Mankato and Duluth. And while they're in Mankato and Duluth, visiting some Minnesota historical sites. So for example, from the Dakota War, they would visit that site in Mankato as well. So all along the way, they would be working on their writing skills and their academic skills as well. And then we would like to bring the students back together again for the follow-up for the next summer. This time, though, they would be, our students would go over to St. Anthony with the same teachers to kind of deepen their academic skills. So that's the 4-step process for summer seminar. This is a photo of the students during the February mid-year check-in when they came together. This is the serious photo. I didn't post the silly photo that they had, the fun photo, but. So we're also proposing a second cohort. Last summer, this was a pilot program because we've heard from the parents, students, and parents, students, and teachers positive comments and interest in expanding. We would like to run a second cohort and expand the program. So kind of with a similar model of summer, mid-year check-in, another experience, and then again, a second summer.
That would be with a new group of kids.
With a new group of kids. So that means that this summer we would have a cohort of ninth grade, a ninth grade class, kids who are coming into ninth grade, and then kids who are going in, the same kids who are going into 10th grade.
Would this summer be the final time that first cohort would meet then? Or is there potential for growing?
There's potential for growing. I know there's a strong desire for growing.
Okay.
This is that's still that pilot group, so I'd like to see how that goes, but there's definitely potential. If we can stick with the kids as they go through, and if there's that desire from the kids and the families, then I'd love to support them.
Okay, and my next question, twofold, was would there be opportunities for other kids to get on board with that weren't included in the first group? So would there be additions? And that's to be determined, I suppose.
With our first pilot group, we weren't thinking about adding to that same group. It would be more, because it would be building on what they've already experienced.
Sure.
But we would definitely be able to expand the programming as we move forward. Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit to the integration aspect of this academy?
Yeah, so it's true integration when we take kids from 2 different districts, teachers from 2 different districts that are planning together, and the district of St. Anthony and Columbia Heights demographically, it's a pretty big difference. And so bringing students together in a purposeful, planful way, talking about themes of integration, identity, community, it's really following what the spirit of the rule is.
Okay. So you have different ethnicities involved in this as well?
Yep, it's a mix. It's a mix of students. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they were very, when they did it, they actually were kind of had a formula to make sure that we had an appropriate mix as well. And the Minnesota Department of Education was very supportive of this. And our plan, as a matter of fact, they had been encouraging it for a number of years on both sides. And when they are looking at the results, they're very pleased. As a matter of fact, One of the things that was said by the director down at Minnesota Department of Education is that this should be the new wave of where integration is going.
I understand there was also growth in the instructors as far as professional development through this experience last summer. Is that correct? Or?
Yes, so they really did bond. The staff bonded together and the students bonded together. The teachers themselves had time to collaborate before the class even started, and then Teaching and Learning, the Office of Teaching and Learning staff supported in helping to develop the curriculum, and just kind of talk through the sequence of what the curriculum would be. We supported them in logistics as well. So, they took a college visit to the University of Minnesota, and of course their favorite part of that is eating at the cafeteria right at the U of M. And so, we supported them with some of those logistics as well.
I would also like to add that prior to the teachers getting together, that we had meetings in this room with the two superintendents, the directors of teaching and learning, the principals involved, and then the teachers in the mix, so that both teams, when they came together, were solidly on board on what the picture was, what we were going to try to do. And then over the course of the summer, both I visited, and so did Superintendent Laney, to just check in to see how this was going. So there was a mixed administration, teachers, students, and parents. So it was the full deal.
And if I may add, that same team has met throughout the school year as well, just to check in and make sure that we're really truly collaborating.
Yeah, I just think that's another fabulous aspect of this whole thing, that it's not just students that are growing, but it's educators and staff and parents, and learning how to be better at integration and meeting the needs of students.
Anybody else? Thanks, have fun. Next up is West Metro Education Program. We'll be getting an update. Superintendent Kelly, Holmgren, Member Landwehr.
As Director Holmgren gets ready to present, and this is meant to be more of a dialogue, as you know. The board likes to be caught up on what's going on with TIES 916 and WEMAP. And WEMAP's at a particularly interesting place this year, because we have passed a resolution to withdraw as effective in the end of June. And so we'd like to keep you apprised of what are some of the critical and burning issues. And it would seem that, as it has been for multiple months, the budget and the finances seem to be, if not red flags, at least issues of concern. And so Bill and Zena and Member Landwehr and myself have met both independently, and Member Landwehr and I are part of the Joint Powers Board, and to put together just in this presentation two things: some reflections on their audit and some reflections on student programs. And with that, unless Ted, you have anything to say, we'll kick it off with Bill. And
Maybe I'll make some comments later.
Yes, okay, very good. I didn't want to upstage you if you wanted to.
Thank you.
Very good. Bill?
Okay, Chair Larkin, members of the board, Superintendent Kelly. This is meant to be just kind of update what we've been looking at since last time we talked about WEMAP. And in that time, I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Okay, we're going to talk about the mission for a second. The mission, again, for Columbia Heights Public Schools is to truly create worlds of opportunity for every learner here at Columbia Heights. And again, our core values: community excellence, collaboration, integrity, respect, courage, and innovation. What the West Metro Education Program is an equity-focused collaborative for the student success, engagement, achievement, and college career readiness, and educator growth, as professional development, equity leadership, and regional action. Members of this group are the following school districts. You'll see neighboring us, Brooklyn Center, ourselves, Eden Prairie, Edina, Hopkins, Minneapolis, Richfield, Robbinsdale, St. Anthony, New Brighton, St. Louis Park, and Wayzata. Now, the audit, we just got the audit. They just finished the audit, so it came in relatively late in the year. And what's happened is during that audit, they actually had 5 findings in this audit. So I just want to walk through each of those with you. First one is a timely preparation of bank reconciliations. When the auditors came in to start working on the audit, the bank reconciliations were not done from the prior year. And at this point, we don't know if we have a timely even now, which will probably get them another finding in next year. But it's pretty hard to know what you have going on in your bank accounts when you haven't reconciled the bank. Of course, if we had done this, I mean, we wouldn't be acceptable to the board at all. Next, there was a proposed audit adjustment that the management really felt that they didn't need to do. I think the auditors really thought they should. It's actually a positive thing for the books that we mapped. There's actually about $47,000 worth of receivables that they thought they should book. But really, the management thought that even though it's a significant number, it really wasn't enough to make that change. So anyway, so they have a finding on that, because the auditors really thought they should have. Number 3, broker certifications. This is an agreement with your broker. We have to do that here. We make agreements with our broker, so any money that we've set aside to make anything we we're not using right now, there's always some cash in the bank, and we use a couple different brokers to try to get the best return we can. We have several CDs and so forth. Anyway, you have to have an agreement with that broker so they know exactly what type of investment vehicle that's acceptable to the school district, so they don't put in something that you don't want. So in this case, WMEP did not do that paperwork with their brokers. Did I miss one? Okay, I didn't. Next, we're seeing the unclaimed property report. And what this is, and mainly this is because they didn't do their bank reconciliations on time. There were several checks that were open well over 12 months. Once you hit 12 months, any dollars that haven't been, any checks that haven't been cashed by a particular school district after it's 12 months old, goes to the state of Minnesota under unclaimed property. For us here, we track that. Once we have something that's getting pretty old, 5-6 months, we make a phone call, say, do you really want this money, or what's happening? Did you lose a check? We'll send you another one, and so forth. In this case, that didn't happen, so that's why they're getting that finding, and it probably will happen again to them next year. And then, of course, the last one is a timely submission of the audited financial statements. By law, school districts have to have all their financial data into the state of Minnesota by the end of November, and then they have to have their audits completed and into the state by the end of December. And in this case, that did not happen, so they have a finding here. What I found interesting is they didn't get a segregation of duties finding, and they only have one person doing the book, so who knew? Okay. Is there any questions on any of those?
No, just explain the funny, we got a segregation of duties thing, a finding for that, so Bill's make a comment to that, so.
Thanks. But we always have fabulous audits.
I do actually, a couple quick questions on that.
Don't
Bill.
make
Do you know
someone
what
easy.
the amount of the unclaimed property, the dollar amount was?
I do not know the dollar amount. That wasn't mentioned in their finding.
Wasn't done.
It's just that they didn't do it.
Okay, and was there any reason listed as to why they didn't do their audit in a timely manner? I mean,
Well, there was a memo 2 or 3 months ago. Oh, you want to go ahead and cancel that?
I believe that in the superintendent's update, I gave you the letter from MMKR, and it was like a page and a half of reasons of what went wrong. Many times, and I'm just going to state it plainly, the auditors would come out and they were not prepared. And an example in this district, when Bill says the auditors are coming, everybody is on deck and we are prepared to pull whatever it is we need. That didn't happen. That was one big thing. But if you look back in the superintendent's update, probably 3 weeks ago, I put in the entire letter from MMKR on all the things that went wrong with that. There were some employees that refused to cooperate as well, and had to be ordered to come in for interviews. And I don't know if one ever did. So, but there's at least about 10 to 12 reasons in that letter.
If I could just add to that, WEMAP does not have a hired business manager. They don't have an employee as a business manager. They contract out for those services, and there was some turmoil there for a while in the fall, and those services were not getting done. So they do have a contracted bookkeeping accounting firm now that they're working with.
Okay, the only other question I have on the proposed audit adjustment, you're saying that the auditor said that there was a $47,000 adjustment that they should make that would be in their favor?
Yes,
And then they chose not to do that?
that's correct.
Okay.
And if I could just give some background on that is a receivable that they're not sure that they'll be able to collect. So to be conservative, they're not booking it for that reason.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, where are we at? Okay, next I just want to talk about the fund balance for WEMAP and kind of what's happened to it over the last few years. I think in a general sense, the WEMAP, the way that the accounting firm was presenting the information to the board, they definitely lumped everything together. So as one, just at one fund balance. And you can see, and when we look at just the one fund balance, you can see that it's actually dropped about $1 million in the last 4 years. So that's a considerable drop. If we move on to the next slide, you see I took it apart. You can see that the assigned piece is really, that's that deferred maintenance piece that they've talked about over and over. Should some of these dollars go to the school districts that took over the buildings and so forth. But you see that part of the fund balance in the blue has dropped considerably from $2 million back in 2012. Now it's only around, I think it's 688, or we'll get to that number in a second. Whereas they're unassigned, which is what they have available to them to work with their programming, that, kind of their savings account. You see that that's actually popped up a tiny bit here the last couple of years, so that helps them a little bit. But still, relatively small number when you look at their budget as a whole. Oh, this page unformatted a little bit, so sorry to follow this. Right now, the WEMAP total fund balance is $1.7 million. When you take out the non-spendable piece of $163,000, and what that is, it's something that's an inventory. It's something that it's not money that they can take and spend on something else. Okay, so that drops it down to the 1.537. You can see the auditors actually have that number at 1.543. So small discrepancy, but a discrepancy nonetheless. And then when you break that down, the assigned, so the dollar amount that is available for deferred maintenance, and that's what the other two school districts want to get a hold of, that's a $688,678. So their unassigned number is $854. So that's what's available to them. So in the current budget year, though, their budget itself is planning to spend down their fund balance by $425,000. Considerable large number, which will drop that unassigned fund balance down to $430,000. So again, if they don't change their budget in the next fiscal year and they have that kind of overage again, the fund balance will actually be down to zero, and that's only about 17 months from now. So there's definitely some turmoil there they've got to take care of in their budget. Also, just to point out, it is estimated that if the 4 schools that have given them a letter to withdraw, if that happens, that will negatively impact their budget by over 60%. So we look at a budget of $1.8 million, that's pushing $1 million, they'll have less in revenue in next year.
Where do you go on the next page, Bill? Just a quick question, the assigned dollar, you said that's the one that the other schools are trying to get a hold of. Has that always been the 688? For some reason, closer to $1 million is what's sticking in my mind. Is that
Well, if you look at, if we can back up a couple slides, if you look back to 2014, you'll see that it's over $1 million So I'm not sure, what kind of capital they spent this last year, but it's gone from 2 million down to this 688,000 in a 4-year period.
But when we were talking, maybe Ted, you know the answer to this one, but there was a dollar amount that they were talking about that was gonna be split, I don't know, 60/40 or something to the two schools. What was that total dollar amount?
That was
the-
around 800,000.
Was it 800,000?
Right.
What happened to the other, do you know what happened to the 120,000 or?
I don't.
Okay.
I think I do. I think they took, and maybe that you can help me with this, Memberland, where I think when they were remodeling the offices, that was about $150,000. And I think they took that out of that fund. But the fund is dwindling, as you can.
Okay,
see.
last we had talked, there wasn't a decision as to when or what they were gonna get for money, and I just remembered it being a bigger number, but, okay, thank you.
Well, it was supposed to be a bigger number, but it's heading in the.
I understand, there was like a certain dollar amount that I remembered was Minneapolis was trying to get a hold of.
Yes, it was a 60/40 split.
Right.
And the money was a bigger number when they first started 2 years ago. And that's because there was about $1 million, I think, in the bank for deferred maintenance, where it came from when the schools were operational. And then as things played out over the course of the transition, there was less, right, Ted?
That's spent on.
We've always heard 800,000, so
Okay.
yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just looking back over the last 4 or 5 years of when the schools were operational, and they had to do more things.
But in general, the money that was being talked about going to those two schools, that hasn't been dispersed to them, correct?
No.
Okay, so any money that was spent on within the 150 for the office remodels and things like that. That was where I was going with that, is did that money ever get dispersed? And it did not.
No,
So,
it
okay,
did not.
that's it, thank you.
Do you have this later, or could we speak to the
That's
resolution?
actually the next slide.
Okay,
So let's
very
go
good.
right one more, there we go. Last week, the WEMAP Joint Powers Board passed a motion to hold a deferred maintenance balance of $688,000 until January of 2019, at which time the Joint Powers Board will review the financial stability and needs of the organization and determine the appropriate allocation of those funds. So at this point, they are not going to allocate those funds out to the other school districts, but hang on to it, at least until 2019. Okay, then just as a kind of a recap, in the short term, the fund balance in the year that we just finished actually dropped $363,000. We're talking about the unassigned portion of this, and that's a drop of about 19% in their fund balance. We talked about this. The current year budget is projected to be $423,000 over the revenues, which would drop that unassigned balance to $430,000 as of June 30th, 2016. And that's a 50% decrease from where they are right now. And of course, then if that budget doesn't get changed and get balanced, if they overrun again another 400, that will be zero by June of 17. And then, of course, what's happened here, too, we've got some unpaid invoices that have shown up from last year that need to be paid. And the big example there, the kind of one that was really big, was the Taher had run their food service program. They're owed over $50,000, and that wasn't paid as of January. Okay, long term.
So.
Oh, go ahead.
So when we're looking at that, for those of you that are, since there's no food service, we're already $400,000 that we're in deficit spending. And then you have a bill show up from last year that wasn't paid. It's charged against this year because there's no going back. So I think they're getting to the bottom of it, if I'm correct, but I think that there are some other invoices they may be concerned about that might come in because they don't know if they're coming in.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're not sure what invoices would still be coming in. So that was another reason why the board voted to hold on to that deferred maintenance money, because we don't know what surprises would be coming down the road.
Okay, I've already touched on this. Again, we talk about long-term, so we get out into the next fiscal year. WEMAP will need to balance their budget to stop their decrease in their fund balance. If not, the fund balance will be zero, 17 months, as June 2017. And then I guess the question is then, will that assigned fund balance, which they've set aside now until 2019, will that ever be available to them to use for, regular operations, and we don't know that question.
I can just say that is the intent of the Finance Committee to make that money available to WEMAP until it's stable.
So moving to programming, the WEMAP participation report from the 11 districts came out in January. The report included district information from all 11 districts with staff usage of WEMAP services, so professional development, and then student program participation. WEMAP included a market value. And then as we move forward, just as a reminder, our participation fee is over $57,000. From our perspective, we're confused about the data that was presented in this report. The market value from our perspective is inflated, and the data may not be accurate for all of the districts. And if it is accurate, then this is too expensive for our district to be able to participate. So looking at, from the report, the professional development, I'm able to see as WEMAP marks attendance and participation. So 10 staff people during this fiscal year from Columbia Heights have participated in WEMAP programming for professional development. So according to the report, that would be their estimated value of per person per session would be $772. So for a little bit of context, this year, the National Physical Education National Conference, we're sending, for one PE to attend a 4-day conference, it's $320. Now, the typical WEMAP's professional developments are 1, sometimes 2 days. In addition, we're able to access professional developments, say, from our Metro EXU, the local Metro EXU, and those sessions they typically run between $125 to $175 to attend. So as you can see, the market value coming from WEMAP is a lot higher than what I would expect it to be. In addition, part of our membership fee has gone towards reimbursing substitute teachers. So if a teacher is able to get a sub and attend a professional development, our membership fee is always, WEMAP has reimbursed us for the cost of the subs. Recently, we had communication from WEMAP that is now in question, whether we'll get the reimbursement, and we won't know until June 30th. So this is a cost, we work with Kelly Services to get our subs, so that a sub can range anywhere from $150 to $179 a day. So this is really a cost that we've not planned for because it's been reimbursed, and somehow at the end of the year we'll have to absorb that cost if that comes to fruition. So for student programs, last year, the school board approved student participation in what's a relatively new program. It just started last year, the Civil Rights Research Experience. Last year it was called the Research Tour. They've made some changes to it this year. So we've elected to participate in the Bedote, which is the American Indian Strand. This is for high school students, and we were allotted 7 slots. So we've been able to, in collaboration with the high school admin and families, we've been able to, 7 students have applied and gone through the process to participate in this experience. So you can see this is an in-state tour. So last year, you may recall, some of the other districts went to Alabama and walked the bridge in Selma and, down in some of the southern states. Where this tour is in Minnesota, so they're looking at Fort Snelling, other Native American sites like Leech Lake, Bemidji, Mille Lacs, perhaps Prairie Island. And so based on the report, and the report came back saying that we would be getting 109% of our market value. which is $42,383 to send the 7 students to a few places during spring break in-state. So that breaks down to over $6,000 per student. And again, putting that in context, because we're in the midst of working with our high school students and families and teachers on a 5-day trip to Chicago. So looking at the 5-day trip to Chicago, where approximately 48 students will participate, and they'll have multiple learning experiences. So for 48 students for 5 days in Chicago, we're looking at a budget of about $40,000. So in conclusion, it's our perspective that the student programs, the market value is either inflated or maybe not based on actual costs.
How many days is that trip? I know it said it's over spring break.
Yep, it's the 5 days. It may be expanded over the weekend, so maybe 7 days. There's an informational family meeting this evening, which some of our staff are attending to gather more information about the specifics. So in conclusion, as I mentioned before, we are confused about the basis of the data that is contained within the member district participation report. We're concerned that this data may not be accurate for our district. And if it is accurate, the market value is simply too expensive for this district and our students to participate. We will continue to work with WEMAP through June 2016 to clarify some of these financial and programmatic questions and concerns. If there's any questions.
Yes, I want to comment too, the data there, I believe the purpose was to show the value of being a member of WEMAP. And I agree with you, it seems very inflated. So I don't know that it's supposed to be an actual determination of the value of the services we receive, but it certainly is not accurate. I agree with you.
You had mentioned you had some comments for.
I pretty much made my comments, so thank you for.
Okay, I have a couple questions. I guess I know that one of the conversations, and Zena, maybe you can address this, or Superintendent Kelly, but just with where we were classified within WEMAP and what that was going to allow us, there was going to be conversations about if there was going to be any flexibility, because based on where they were putting us, it wasn't a good fit for us. Has there been discussion about that, and has that gotten any better as far as them being more open to adjusting to what we really need?
So I attended the last WeRep meeting, which is district representatives meet on a regular basis, and there wasn't an opportunity to talk about that. Right now, that group is talking about root causes to try and get to the root cause of achievement gaps. And so it's a pretty full agenda. There wasn't time for discussion. I will be attending the meeting next week, and I can certainly bring that up.
I would just like an and to that. We're finding that this year, if in a nutshell, we've had the 10 staff members that have participated in staff development. We're sending 7 students onto the field trip. We have $57,000 invested, and we have had no contact with WEMAP staff on site coming out to even have a conversation about what is it that you'd like to do differently with the model that we've proposed, or the model that we'd like to develop with you. So we've had no staff contact, and so we're looking at that, and if we're in the report, if we're at 109% of our return on investment, because that's what they're saying, perhaps they're not planning on getting to us at all. But what we are hearing, and I think that Member Landver was there when this was said, that they're thinking about cutting services in the next semester. And so if that's the subs, and if that is additional workshops that we might have participated in, this may be the only participation we have in WEMAP this year, are those staff members, the 10 that went either to an online class or participated, and then the students that go on this trip.
And then I guess my question may be directed to you, Ted, as far as on the finance piece of things. You're on the finance committee, is that what it's
Right.
called?
Mhm.
Okay. Is there conversation that's taking place about what they're going to do? I mean, I know that they said they're not going to release those funds, but are there other things other than cutting services that they're talking about doing to try and stem this a little bit from where it's, based on the numbers we're getting presented here, where it's headed?
Yeah, there's just been general ideas at this point, nothing specific that I know of. We are working on better policies and as far as financial management and accounting. And that's mostly what I've been involved with. So, but the idea is to offer services and value to member and non-member districts and increase the revenue coming into WEMAP. And how that's going to be done, I don't know.
So they're looking more at how to increase their revenue versus making any kind of cuts to...
I haven't heard of cuts, so maybe Superintendent Kelly knows more about that than I do. But
The only thing that I've heard, I think, Ted, is the same thing that you've heard in the meetings, but I could be wrong, and that is not serving food at workshops, and perhaps not doing the reserves, cutting possible workshops in the spring, along those lines. But we have a lot of positions, and we have a lot of overhead and a lease, and none of those short-term things, so far as the meetings that Ted and I have been at, I don't know what the Finance Committee is, have really been addressed as far as what do you do to stop the bleed right now?
So there's been no conversation about looking at what their staffing is and if they need to reduce it or anything like that? So I mean, something similar
Not
to
yet.
what we would do here when we have budget cuts?
Can I ask a quick question
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
Director
Sorry.
Stenbeck? In terms of the 10 staff that have participated in some sort of workshop, do we feel pretty comfortable that the district would be able to find those same or similar trainings elsewhere without using WEMAP?
So in January at our district in-service, we dedicated the entire district in-service day to provide a lot of different options for our staff around closing the achievement gap, racial equity, cultural topics. And to be honest, we did reach out to WEMAP for support on that day and were declined for that day. So the entire day was done on our own. We have high-functioning equity teams at every single building, including early childhood, who meet on a regular basis to be it read a book or share resources, talk and plan about what they're going to do with their staff. And then in addition, they do equity outings. So they go to local plays or speeches on their own time, on the weekends and in the evenings. So I do feel that in the past, we have, as a staff, been able to access WEMAP sessions and have learned about closing the achievement gap and have learned some things. And so at this point, I do feel that we are, I do feel confident that we can contact, I know we can because we did it in January.
Thank you.
I'm still having kind of a struggle with the new model and what exactly are we supposed to be getting? And has that already started, or is that proposed, or?
I'll just give it I'll try to answer that from my perspective. Ted, you might want to answer it from yours as well. But the model as proposed didn't seem to sit well with the districts that were involved. And so there's been a fair amount of conversations with the superintendent and the superintendent's group and the executive director that perhaps a move to here is the basic services and here's the cafeteria or tiered where that you can choose from. So here's what we're going to charge you for your basic membership, and then here's some of the choices where you can put your money so that it matches with your integration plans in your district. That is still under discussion, I think. The superintendents had 2 sessions, and we gave the materials to Dr. Mateer. She was going to work with another outsourced company that will run some of the costs to see what that base price and the choice might be. And hopefully, they're thinking that there might be some, not tweaking, but some reform of the model by April 1st. because for some people that are doing the plans as we are, we can't wait that long, but other people would like to have some answers by April 1st. But I don't want to say that that's the drop-dead date, because that really lands in the purview of the executive director and the WEMAP Joint Powers Board and the staff. I don't know, Ted, if you have anything else to add to that.
No, that's what I know too.
So it's more like a ties model, like how we participate in ties.
In ties.
Okay.
I think that you're so familiar with the 916 model.
Yeah, it's a little different.
It is not that.
Yeah, it's not that.
At the 916 model, we say, what's the actual cost? What's the most, how can we help our members to reduce their costs, and how can we leverage dollars? And in this model, we talk about leveraging costs and leveraging the power of the group, but it's based on market, and 916, we don't talk about market value. We say, this is what it actually costs us. Let's divide up the shares, and let's get the best price for everybody.
Let's find a way to reduce those costs. You know, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
That's the big focus right now that Connie has right now is focusing on what they can do to help the districts, so they don't need to send it to the expensive 916 programs.
Yes,
You know,
so
and being
it would
able to
be
collaborate
the
with that.
reverse of that.
Okay.
The exact
So
opposite.
as I can see, I don't know what we're getting out of it.
Any other questions or comments regarding the WEMAP?
No.
Okay.
I have one other thing to say, in that we will be coming back to you because our own integration plan is due. And since we have sent our letter in, our resolution to withdraw, you will be getting information on what the state, what we're going to propose to the state and what the state would allow us to do. And so you'll get that as an information item and then as an action item, and that all has to be done by March 15th. So.
Maybe just to get it on the record, I mean, the conversation we had when we agreed to withdraw was that we would, stay open-minded and look to see if there was any kind of changes or anything that might encourage us to remain with WEMAP. As administration and staff, has anything changed where, that the decision that was made in December was a bad decision as far as moving forward?
I will speak on the part of administration. I think that the surprises and the things that we're seeing now, I think it was probably a good decision that we decided to move forward on looking at the new integration rule, new collaborations, and a different integration plan for our staff, if the services provided for the $57,000 are going to stay in the range that we just discussed. So we're feeling pretty solid with the resolution that you passed.
Okay, and just based on the information I'm seeing, at least financially, and listening to, program-wise, that it isn't a direction that we probably are going to, we're going to stay the course as far as where we're at, but I just wanted to, that was my interpretation, but wanted to get some feedback from, if I was reading it correctly. So.
And I think administration, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing is that if we file our integration plan, and I'm going back to something that Member Landwehr said early on, that if we actually vote for it and decide to go, then we should really let them know. And so as we formulate our integration plan, I think Vice Chair Bassett asked if there were groups that we're not going to include EMED in their integration plans for this year, that once we make that decision, we send it to the state, that we let WEMAP know that we have made that we are resolute and that our plans have been sent to the state. And I think that's only courtesy, because they have to figure out the budget for next year as well.
Sure. Okay. Right.
I would just encourage this, administration to look for much more efficient ways of accomplishing our integration goals. I think we've just seen one with St. Anthony, so, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Good idea.
It will be more Columbia Heights focused, more student focused, and obviously, we'd return our own phone calls.
All right, unless there's anything else, thank you guys.
Thank you.
And the patient group in the back gets to come forward now. for the North Park Learning Studios research.
While the group is coming forward, I want to thank them for coming forward. I also want to put this presentation in focus. As you know, we've been working on learning studios for a period of time at North Park. In addition to that, we've been looking at the North Park facilities plan. And we have a total cost of ownership there where we need some facility upgrade to that building. And the thought was that we would take a look at the two of them in tandem. What is the research telling us about the North Park learning studios and the facilities? And then I believe that it was in February 2 years ago that we brought together a concept of what a site-based plan incorporating learning studios could look like at North Park. It was then decided that we would give this research some time, the studios time to develop, and then we would bring back as administration to the board the research, and then we would once again put on your plate the governance question of what to do with the facilities at North Park. And so, having said that, one of the major challenges and governance issues that you'll have probably in 2016 is really what should the design of that building be and what should the capital cost be. And so this will be a phase. Tonight we're dealing with the research, and at the next work study session we'll be discussing and bringing forward some of those plans that you've seen before and others. Does that make some sense? I pass the baton.
Chair Larkin, Superintendent Kelly, members of the board, good evening. It's been a while since someone called me patient, Chair Larkin. Thank you. This is going to be a special challenge tonight. This is Dan DeVoe, and Dan started with us at North Park almost 2 years ago. And as a student, he was a graduate student at the University of Minnesota. Since then, the Cunningham Group has actually hired Dan. And Dan has done the lion's share of the research on the learning studios. And we're giving ourselves an extra challenge tonight. We've done this presentation or some form of it like many, many times, but this is the first time we've ever done it sitting down. In fact, I don't think we've ever done it sitting still or standing still or anything like that. So,
or with a mic.
Or with a mic. We have big voices. So we'll get started. So just a brief agenda here. We're going to go over demographics. I'm going to really skim over some of this because you all are quite familiar with a lot of the information that we would normally be giving a crowd that doesn't know us at all. And then we'll dig into the research after a little bit of history. So with the introduction, you know where we're located, you know who our students are. And so we'll go quickly with that. Much of what we've done has been really had its foundation in trying to figure out how to provide expert amounts of practice for our students in 21st century skills. And as you know, several years ago, we did adopt the P21 framework for looking at 21st century skill building. And in particular, we really like to focus on the 4 C's, which are the foundation of that arch there. And they're communication, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. So at North Park, this all started about 5 years ago, before we had learning studios, and it started in 2nd grade. It was a team that really took this on. We had been talking an awful lot about how to provide the kind of necessary practice for 21st century skills. And we decided that in order to practice those 4 C's, that we were going to implement a STEAM initiative. We always had, or not always, but for quite a time, had a very strong science program at North Park and in the other elementaries in Columbia Heights. And we've always had strong and articulate math programming. So really to deliver these, we focused on the middle letters. And, Superintendent Kelly, of course, helped out an awful lot with the arts and really making that a focal point of our district. With technology integration, we hired a technology integrationist, and we started saving money out of the building budget, out of technology budget, every place we could, to really provide students with devices. And as far as technology goes, that's what we focused on. We focused on student devices, not smart boards and things like that, but devices that students could use to create. And then finally, but not the least at all, we adopted engineering as elementary, which dovetails very nicely with our FOSS science curriculum. And has really helped us move forward with the critical thinking and the collaboration pieces with our students, and really creativity as well. So some of the student outcomes that have come out of this are the student e-portfolios. That's where they all started, with each student having their own website or web page that became their electronic portfolio that starts in second grade but then follows them all the way through high school, and they learn to curate their work. They've also, beginning in second grade, they start learning about audio production and video production. They really focus on scientific method. One project, for instance, that our second graders have done in the past, they break up into collaborative groups of 3, and their engineering unit has them using different ingredients to create Play-Doh. And so each person in the collaborative group creates a different form of Play-Doh, and then they have to work as a group to determine which is the best product. Which is a lot of collaboration right there and a lot of consensus building. And then once they conclude which product that is, they're given the iPads and they say, okay, here's iMovie, this is how you open it, figure out how to use it. In 2 weeks, you need to have a 30-second commercial spot. And then those second graders create a 30-second commercial spot, and at the end of 2 weeks, we bring in a committee of judges comprised of advertising professionals from a Minneapolis firm, and they actually, our students have to present in front of them, and they're given feedback. They're given feedback in the form of fake money, and then they just secretly put it in the box for the team that they felt like had the best product, and students have learned an awful lot, and that's been one of our favorite projects at North Park. But none of that was possible before we had the learning studios. And at the end of that first year, when we were in 3 separate classrooms, the teachers debriefed with me towards the end of the year, and they felt like they were really delivering on 3 out of 4 Cs. But that 4th C, collaboration, they felt was impossible because of the bricks and mortar that were separating them. You had little groups of 24 to 27 students that were divided in 3 little sections, and the teachers were not able to co-teach, which we found over time is really one of the main keys to success in a learning studio. So we're sitting in the media center at the time, which if anyone, I know John, Molly, Natty, you probably remember that. It was a very overused space. We had a second grade classroom in there, a 4th grade classroom. We had the library. We had the computer lab in there. We had a professional library. We had sets of offices. Nobody ever used it because everybody was always there, And so we were sitting in that space, and one of our teachers said, God, it would be great if we could have this space. And that's when I started working with Superintendent Kelly, and she had the idea of accessing the Cunningham group to come in and take a look at solving this design challenge and being able to turn the media center into a learning studio. And so that began with the charrette process. And I know some of you have served on charrettes at North Park, and you've heard me describe it, but it's among the best professional development activities I've ever done. And instead of telling an architect or a group of architects what you want so that they'll go design something that they can bring it back so that you can tell them you don't like it, and then they take it back and work on it again, and before you know it, nobody likes the design anymore. After a day and a half, we have a design that is created by the stakeholders with the facilitation of architects like Dan. And that has been a wonderful experience. So we've done 4 charrettes now. We did one for the second grade studio, the one for the third grade studio, one for the 4th grade studio, and then also a master planning charrette. And those were done over a period, all 3 charrettes were completed over a period of about 18 months. So this is the second grade studio, as you can see in design. I'm sure you all have been in it and you're familiar with it, and it does have the footprint of a media center. And we found that it's a quite ideal footprint, and there's some more statistics there. We've had actually up to 107 students in the studio, and so really it's quite comfortable for any number, 85 to 107, and we could even have gone further than that. There's plenty of space, and it's incredibly flexible for the students. And then, of course, the third grade studio. When we got to 3rd and 4th grades, we had a different kind of problem. We didn't have another media center to gut, so we had to take banks of classrooms. And because if we were to move any of the walls that were adjacent to the outside of the hallway, we would no longer meet code with our mechanicals. We weren't able to do so. So we removed walls from in between and tried to create design solutions in the long linear footprint that we had to work with. So that's the third grade studio, and then of course the fourth grade studio. We learned a lot with the third grade project, so that our fourth grade project, we use that to make a better design. So the goals and how we get there. Bottom line is we want our students to learn how to read, we want them to learn how to write, and we want them to learn how to do math, but they need to be able to do so much more. That is probably about 20% of what a student needs to know to be functional in the 21st century economy. And what we have done, what our students have done and our staff has done, is they've created programming that has required a transformation of space. And this transformation of space has resulted in the opportunity for our students to practice these 4 C's and get thousands of hours of practice with the 4 C's. So this is the team. These are the people that were assembled. You can see the University of Minnesota, John Kamatzi is a professor of architecture. That's where I first met Dan. And we also had Wendy Friedmeier from the School of Education at the U. Matt Tracy was the first architecture student we had. We had him for about 6 months before he graduated. And then Dan stuck around, of course, for quite a lot longer. And then we have the folks from Cunningham Group, whom you'll meet next week. And then our team at North Park. We also did some research with Wilder Research Foundation and presented their findings to the school board last year. So this is the phasing, and this is just how the phasing of the project worked, and you're all familiar with that. We did some summer remodeling, and right now we are still in phase 3. We're telling the story, and we're presenting the research on that story. So this is the research portion, and at this point I'm going to turn things over to Dan DeVoe, who, as I said before, is now working with the Cunningham Group and has been with us at North Park for nearly 2 years.
Thanks, Jeff. Can we bounce back a couple slides here?
Sure.
So just to give you guys a little bit of context, I entered this project as a third-year graduate student of the School of Architecture, and that was right around in between. What you see up here is phase 1A and phase 1B, in between when the 3rd and the 4th grade learning studios were built. And so I picked up a lot of the research that was originally conducted by, as Jeff Sosik has mentioned, a previous graduate student. So when I first started looking at this project, we cataloged what had already been done. And Matt was a 3rd-year graduate student as well at the time, and did a lot of surveys of students and teachers within the learning studios. And what he heard back was a lot that initially validated a lot of the responses that you could kind of feel were happening in the space. Things about size and things about furniture, things like the furniture is soft and comfortable, the students love it, I can share it with my friends, things like that. But we really noticed that there was a lack of understanding of how the physical environment actually affected learning. Get these surveys back, they were great, but they didn't actually help us progress a model and how we can develop architecture further in elementary education. To add to that, phase 1B also, as Jeff mentioned, included the Wilder research, and to a similar point that added another level of kind of academic coding to that sort of assumptions, a thorough report indicating a lot of the same things. A couple quotes that we pulled from their report said that over 96% of the students felt more confident and ended up taking more ownership over their learning in a space compared to a previous model. We also found that teachers said that their studio environment has changed their entire approach to and philosophy about education. And so this really was kind of the beginning and the momentum that really created this passion for me to do the research, as well as kind of dig in a little bit deeper into the qualitative methodology that I'll explain in a minute or two. So one of the first things that I did after kind of knowing, again, these sort of general, really feel-good sort of concepts was how do we define the problem? And so that we use the term pattern language, but really what it means is just to come up with a set of parameters that describes what we're seeing in the space so that we can have a conversation with people and move forward. Otherwise, we're just talking really meta level, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't do us any good. So we came up with essentially 3 categories, and then the 4th one we sort of adopted, but we took each one of the spaces, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade learning studios, and we categorized them, like I said, into 3 spaces. Alpha spaces, which as you see here are indicated in yellow, those are the larger larger, more central spaces that are intended to have the biggest population of students at any one given time. The other space we called is now called a beta space. That's more similar to your standard size 900 square foot classroom. Those are more breakout spaces. They can take an entire base group that I'll mention later, but that's a normal cohort of 20 to 25 students. And then gamma spaces. These are smaller breakout spaces for individualized learning, 2, 3, 4 students at a time, a couple teachers, so on and so forth. And then dirt walls. Dirt walls are technology-infused walls. In the simplest terms, they are projection screens that teachers would use that actually are built into a wall. So teachers can write on them, students can write on them. They, in some kind of cases, have light in them, so on and so forth. So those are the 4 terms, and this is what we use as our benchmark to describe the spaces that you see here. So from there, we took those spaces and we quantified them. We assigned a square footage. There's a couple of trends that you can see happening right away. First one that I'll mention is the overall decrease in the footprint of each one of the spaces. So from second being the largest at 4,200 square feet, going down to roughly 3,500 square feet, which is actually smaller than you would get if you compare that to 4 standard classroom sizes at about 900 square feet each. So that was one of the first things we noticed, is there's obviously a size constraint that happens between the 3 studios. What we also noticed is there's a trend in sort of evolution in what these spaces mean to each other. So for example, what you'll see in second grade, you have about 2,500 square feet for this alpha space, 1,300 for a beta space, and then about 400 made up of gamma. That relationship goes away in the third grade. Gamma kind of disappeared, and we'll explain sort of the difficulties that had later. And so then it reemerged again, that gamma space in the 4th grade learning studio. And so you kind of get an understanding of the evolution of the space, but again, this is just quantitative. We really wanted to understand the qualitative means of what we were looking at. So again, initial conclusions. There's an alpha-beta space balance that you see, kind of this relationship and how they move with each other. There's definitely a need for these gamma spaces, and we'll get into why a little bit later. And then, as I mentioned, an overall decrease in the size of each studio. So again, how does this affect learning? How does it go from a qualitative or quantitative problem to a qualitative problem? So with that, we sort of approached it in 3 steps. That's difficult to read, so I'll try to do my best to describe it. But what I did to get this sort of research is I would take a sheet of paper, I would go into a learning studio on a given day, and I would essentially record 3 things. And those 3 things were notes, so I'm writing down what is happening at a given time. And then I'm writing down sort of drawing in where those students are. So it's like a floor plan or a diagram. And then last, I take photos. So what I did from that is I converted it into a digital format that I could manipulate. And that's what you see in the upper right-hand corner. And then in the bottom, what we've done is we've overlaid all of this data into one compiled piece that allows us to see the trends that emerge based on a given time period. So this could tell us things such as frequency of where students exist in the studio, how long they're there for certain periods of time. And this is essentially the language that we created to tell the story. Is there any questions right now? Straightforward? Okay. And so this is just an example of a piece of data that we collected for the 2nd grade learning studio. This was recorded over 2 hours. What you see in yellow are the larger blobs of students. I call them blobs. And red are where the teachers are over a period of 2 hours. And so what you see here, and I'll start getting into the trends later, you can start to pick up on patterns that happen, and we compare these over almost a year's worth of data. This is the 3rd grade learning studio. Again, red is teachers, and yellow are where the students are over a course of 2 hours as well, and then 4th grade as well. So what are the trends? What did we see? And does the physical location of these students actually promote the 4 C's? What does that mean for critical thinking, creativity, communication? And so here's what we saw. And on the left, what you see is just a little tally, a reminder to all of us of what was in the 2nd grade at that time. 90 to 100 students in this one space, 5 full-time teachers, 3 pre-service teachers, and there's originally 4 base groups. And what that means is it was originally 4 classrooms that have now been combined into a larger learning studio model. So in the center, we've got our larger alpha space. We've got 2 gamma spaces on either side in the lighter gray, and then the darker gray on the right is the beta space. And that was sort of our initial assumption when we looked at this at first glance. The first thing that we found is that these walls indicated in red were the first determinant in separating into base groups. And so what that means is essentially you throw everybody into a room, teachers and students want structure. And so one of the ways that they form structure is by using these walls. And a lot of times these walls have projection screens, sometimes they don't. What we also saw was that the gamma spaces, when physically adjacent to a larger space, were used a lot. So the inverse of that means when gamma spaces are disconnected from the actual spaces, they're not used. And we'll see that in a couple examples as well. And then lastly, what we saw was that the projection screens and their location and direction also informed the base groups. So in this case, what happened in the second grade, and part of the reason why the model for the second grade works so well, was that the projection screens and the location of the interior walls separated it into 3 mutualistic base groups. So it worked. And to that point, what you have is an equal distribution of space that was easily usable for all teachers and students.
And I'll tell you, one of the things that scared us the most as we were doing the design was that right there. That dirt wall, it's all glass. And as we're designing, the old teacher in me thought, holy cow, those kids are going to be facing each other, making googly faces to each other. They're going to be distracted by each other. You know, this is a risk, you know. But let's take it. And in September, we did our tour, and Gary Prest, who was working with Cunningham at the time, said, "Jeff, do you notice that?" And I said, "What's that?" The kids, they're not making googly faces at each other. It has never been an issue, and really, that's a testament to student engagement right there.
So once we got to this point, and I realized we were here. I said to myself, okay, we've gone from now 4 base groups down to 3, big deal. What does that do for you? The key piece to this is almost indescribable, but it has to do with the way that the teachers and the students interact with the space. And so we talk about that fourth piece, of that collaboration piece that wasn't happening in the original bricks and mortar, as Jeff called it, model. And that speaks to collaboration. And so in a 3 base group model, remember this was originally 4 base groups, what we saw is that the studio culture changes. Because the spaces are inherently flexible and easy to move around, the students and the teachers do that. And so because of that, there's a regaining of ownership in these spaces. And also the students don't feel like they're just confined to 900 square feet. They now have upwards of 4,000 square feet that they can use, that they can explore, that they can choose to locate themselves how they see fit given a particular task. There's also and the design was on purpose this way, there were no adult spaces. And what this meant is that teachers treated the space as if it were theirs. And so the ownership kind of shows that. They're engaged in the space at all times. When students were on break, teachers were collaborating in between sessions. And so it broke the 1 classroom, 1 teacher model. And so you all of a sudden get this inherent collaboration between the teachers because they're physically adjacent to each other at all times. So for example, at any given time, what you might see is one teacher is working in one space with 5 or 6 students, while another teacher is able to work with another 2 or 3 students in that same space. Not normally available when you're working with a 1 teacher, 1 classroom model. And also the visual collaboration was key. I mentioned there's physical adjacency, there's also visual adjacency. So while one teacher is working on a lesson plan, she's able to see out of her periphery what another teacher is doing. And if that teacher happens to be doing an exercise that is extremely successful, she can immediately adapt. She can see what that teacher is doing, and they kind of keep themselves in check at all times because they're so close to each other, because they can see through these transparent walls, and in some cases because there aren't any walls. So for that reason alone, we knew that the second grade model was very successful. The third grade and fourth grade models were successful, but we wanted to compare it against the second grade as sort of our base group. So did the same things happen in third and fourth given different constraints? So again, on the left, what we have is 85 to 90 students in what used to be 4 standard-sized classrooms. There's 4 full-time teachers, 2 pre-service teachers, and 4 base groups. So here again you see larger alpha space in the middle, but now this time those gamma, I would also call them, I would probably call them gamma, but they're more like beta spaces in terms of 450 square feet. They're somewhere in the middle. Those are on the periphery. And so what we saw here was the intention was a large primary group, base group in the middle, 2,600 square feet. So not 2, not 3 like there was in the second grade learning studio. And then similarly what we see, these beta gamma-esque spaces on the perimeter. So the model told us that what really should be happening, given the projection screen location, are 4 primary base groups. Different than the second grade, that there's 4 distinct projection screens here that want to have 4 base groups. But the model, separation of space in the dirt walls, wanted those 2 exterior gamma spaces to act towards the middle. So what you see is upwards of 45 students, potentially around 1 projection screen. And so for that reason, it didn't quite work. We see some issues with the curriculum.
And one of the things we've done since then is over winter break this year, we moved this dirt wall to about right here. And so that really, it's changed the space. We created a real beta space. And so the space itself was flexible enough that for a very small investment, we were able to bring some people in to move that wall. And now that we, because of what we've learned and because of the flexibility of the space, we've been able to make it much more functional.
And so the key difference here compared to the second grade, and although this does work to some extent, the difference was the separation of these 4 base groups with the projection screens. The curriculum wants it to be 4 base groups. However, the space conflicts in certain ways and wants to promote a 2 base group thing. So what you see is sort of this inefficiency in the model and the way that the layout and the structure of the studio is constructed. Similarly with fourth. So what you see with fourth is that center space is a little bit smaller, and those 2 beta gamma spaces on either end are slightly bigger. Again, 85 to 90 students, 4 full-time teachers, 1 pre-service teacher, and then originally 4 base groups. So again, what we see is a push separation into thirds, 2 secondary base groups on the exteriors, and then 1 central primary group. We see 4 projection screens located that promote 4 base groups again, so you kind of can sense the conflict that's about to happen.
And you can also see what we did with the design, kind of the same thing that we did after the fact with third grade, is we made sure that we had large enough spaces throughout to actually promote a more flexible environment. So the one thing that we did learn with third grade is the very large flexible linear space, it wasn't quite as flexible as we had anticipated. So we used what we learned, and we made this overall a more flexible space.
So the one key difference here, and this kind of alludes to what Jeff was getting at, was on the bottom 2 lower sections, you see basically the recreation of those 900 square foot classrooms, those 2 base groups. But on the top, what you see is sort of a hybrid model, almost kind of getting back to that second grade model again, where you've got an accessible gamma space, a slightly larger space as well. And so I call this a 3.5 base group model because it almost wants to be that second grade again, but it's a little bit better than the third grade model. So what we concluded after our year or so of research was that interior partitions, in this case could be dirt walls, could be just glazed walls, help initially form those base groups, the established structure. The primary structure within that is extremely flexible. Teachers are regaining ownership over their spaces. The gamma spaces, again, are used frequently when they're physically adjacent. When they're separated by 100, 200 lineal feet, teachers won't use them. It's just too much work to get students into those spaces. Also, curriculum, the projection screens, in these cases, further define the base groups, as you saw, and it's highly efficient when the curriculum, in this case the projection screens, and the spaces overlap, so you get that mutualistic space. Second grade model worked extremely well. Fourth grade was pretty good. Third grade was probably the least efficient in terms of curriculum matching architecture. And so lastly, we'll just talk briefly about personalized learning. And this, I think, is one of the most important pieces to the research because it has little to nothing to do with the architecture, and it's about a story. And a lot of the times when I'm sitting there and I'm watching students, it's hard to describe how engaged they are in this type of space. And so what I started doing was just telling a story of a student. And so at any given day, what I would do is I would watch a particular student. So in this case, I've cataloged 4 students at any given time. We're in the 4th grade learning studio, and I'm watching 4 students, and I'll watch them for a period of 2 hours, and only them. I want to know what they're doing. I'll photograph them. I'll ask them what they're working on, those type of things. And so I always like to tell this story at the very end. We're going to follow student 1. We'll call him John. He's in the upper left-hand corner right now. And so what you see here is John is working on a task. He's building a little pyramid out of blocks. So you could argue of those 4 C's, he's engaging in creativity and critical thinking. But what's happening is every time he's trying to build these blocks, the students next to him who are working on the same table are bumping it. And as a result, the blocks keep falling over and he can't build the pyramid. So in a normal 900 square foot classroom, if he doesn't have space to move somewhere else, he gives up, he stops. He stops engaging in critical thinking, he stops engaging in creativity. But in a learning studio model, what you see is that he moves. He moves from a less stable surface to a more stable surface, and as a result, he's able to complete his task. So he's shown ownership over his task, and he's able to prolong the amount of time he's engaging in critical thinking and creativity. And then, after maybe another 20 minutes or so, the task changes. And so in this case, he's now in a large group listening to a teacher, and so the task changed from individual type tasks to large group. And what I think is fun to see is that not only is John sitting on the table, and I think that's worth laughing about, but the teacher's okay with it. And I think the important thing here and what we noticed is that the student is learning, and the teacher's most important thing is that he is learning. Not that he's, sitting on a table, it's what is he doing? He's learning, and the studios allow him to do that.
And one of the most important things that we have learned is in order to maintain that engagement, we have to honor the physical needs of the student. And really the furniture goes a long way with that. The furniture is incredibly comfortable, but we also have to kind of let go of some of our traditional, teacher rules that we don't really know why they existed. You can't make your body comfortable if you are not sitting the way that I expect you to be sitting. Then how can you focus? How can you engage? Well, what you see every day is you see kids utterly focused and utterly engaged because in many cases they're not worried about how much their bottom hurts because of how they have to sit.
And then he really changes. He gets really uncomfortable. And I include this because it is that funny, but it does kind of, I think, explain ownership over learning, but also the willingness for the teacher to say, okay, if you are still learning, I will allow you to do what you need to do to get there. So what we saw just over this brief little story to recap is he utilized over 2,700 square feet. In this case, he's using, I think it was, 2 hours. He performed multiple tasks, an individual task and a large group task. He used 3 surfaces, which you could argue were largely determinant in the success of his activity. And again, the environment here was focusing on what the students were learning. Also, a couple things, and we've already alluded to this a little bit, but do you want to?
Yeah, as you all know, I believe it was a presentation earlier in the year. We moved our second grade studio. Well, actually, it's still in the same spot. It's just not a second grade studio. It's a fifth grade studio now. And one of the really nice things about it, though, is the team of teachers who developed the studio learning in second grade went up to fifth grade. I call it back, but it's up. They went up to fifth grade, and so they were able to come full circle with their students, with those original students. We call them the beta group because they're always in beta. They're always doing something new, and so it's the first year of the fifth grade studio. It's also the first year of the Personalized Learning Initiative, which has been passed down from Columbia Academy that all fifth grades are using in the Columbia Heights Public Schools this year. But really, our students in the fifth grade studio, they've been working in personalized learning really since second grade. It's just now it's articulated and defined in a different way, and it's more consistent across the buildings in fifth grade. But it was pretty obvious that there was no way we were going to stuff those kids back into traditional classrooms after 3 years in studios, and we didn't have any more space to create any more studios. So we've made the studio model a third through fifth grade model as opposed to beginning in second grade.
And then you mentioned the third grade.
Yep, in the third grade, I already mentioned that, so I already blew this slide earlier, but we did move that wall, and it's made a tremendous difference. And it's so nice to have this flexible spacing where you can make a little adjustment. You can spend just a few dollars and make a little adjustment, and it can make a big difference.
So I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Thank you.
Questions? I know it's a lot of information, a lot of little circles, a lot of big circles.
Have we been able to measure increases in student achievement through this model?
And The only methods that we have for student achievement right now are MCAs, like every place else, and we've seen a steady increase every year. We were up about 2% each year. The unfortunate thing about the MCAs is they don't measure everything that our students are learning. And so actually, one of the slides that we skipped over there a little bit, we are taking a look at 21st century skill rubrics, which are supported by P21 group. And so we purchased those. It's a small price about 18 months ago, and we're beginning to work with those so that we can begin to actually, for lack of a better term, grade our kids in the 4 C's. And this year we're looking at collaboration. Last year we looked at creativity. And we hope to roll them out in a more standardized fashion in the very near future. But like I said, unfortunately, the MCAs don't test the 4 C's. They test reading and they test math. We've made AYP every year that we've been in the learning studios, and we have seen increases in student achievement, although modest, but we've also seen decreases in the achievement gap along that time also. Yeah, Laura.
They're going up to the academy next year.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit on how that transition might be achieved.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. I think that taking the 5th grade PLI this year was a really smart move by the district because it has standardized that personalized learning piece for all of our 5th graders. And actually the 5th grade teams across the district are actually working quite closely together. In fact, in my 12 years here, I haven't seen grade level groups work more closely together than what I've seen with some of our 5th grade teams this year. They've all agreed to do math, but each of the teams has also agreed to do more. And I know at North Park, for instance, our students have personalized playlists, is what they're called. This new millennial lingo of a playlist. And every morning they have 2 hours to complete their playlist, where they have minimum daily requirements that they have to complete, and then they have elective time also. And a lot of times that elective time is used up for band, but that elective time can be used up really for anything within their academic day, academic disciplines within their day. And I think that building that the way that we are at North Park, and I know the other buildings are doing it as well, is really going to create some equal footing for them once they reach 6th grade. I know the space will be different.
That was the concern, the thing. I was like, how is it going to be traditional to go back into? I mean, they're going to be moving around a bit more than you would do in a traditional elementary classes. With the academy, you'll be moving from class to class. But the spaces aren't going to be the flexible spaces that they've been accustomed to.
Correct. And I'm pretty confident that the students coming from North Park are going to be able to learn in any environment. I feel like they're incredibly well prepared because of the environment and the instruction and the programming they've been a part of. I'm a strong believer in programming, and I feel that the programming across 5th grades in all the buildings is pretty consistent. And that's really where the kids are going. I think the one difference at North Park with what we've done is we have allowed the programming to inform this space. I don't think that's going to hold kids back once they get to middle school, or once they get to Columbia Academy. I think it's only going to enhance them, but because the programming has been so consistent across all the buildings in 5th grade, I really think that they're all going to be reaching 6th grade on pretty equal footing.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. Would it be possible for us to get some data about this, about the cohorts of the North Park students going through the academy, to see if there is, I mean, it's certainly a different way to teach, but if there's going to be maybe some more interesting kind of results that'll come out of this, because I'm really fascinated with this whole thing. So I'm just kind of wondering how they're going to adapt to this space and what they're going to bring to the other students as well.
Well, and we'll start collecting those data next year because the first Learning Studio
Isn't it
group
exciting?
goes to the academy next year.
I love it.
Well, good thing. The director Stenvik and I really like working together, so I think we'll taking a look at that in the near future.
I think it'd also be interesting to compare North Park students to Highland and Valley View students who are in more traditional settings, and see if there are differences in what they are. I'd imagine in the P21 skills they'd be much more advanced.
Yeah, and really, I mean, the challenge there is there's no traditional assessment for it. And so that's why we are taking such a strong look at those 21st century rubrics. It would, I suppose that'd be a little bit like comparing, how students are doing at North Park are doing with Wicker, which is a part of AVID, because our students haven't been exposed to AVID yet. And so I think that it would be kind of comparing apples and oranges at this point. But I think it's really something that perhaps would be worth evaluating in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Oh, I've got lots more to say on this. I love talking about North Park. So, yeah, and I do think that it is interesting that maybe we do need to look at maybe different ways of being able to assess the because you can certainly look at test scores and say, yes, we're meeting these goals, but the real purpose is how successful are these kids going to be when they graduate.
Yep.
It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what they actually score as long as they're successful after grade. That's our job, and being able to assess these skills that they're going to need regardless of where they go, whether they go into some sort of a science or any type of industry, being able to utilize these skills is going to be valuable in their life no matter what they do.
And that's one of the things about being a teacher. You don't see the product of your success for so long. Because there's that patience again, Chair Larkin. It's when that adult comes back as a 30-year-old, and hopefully to let you know what they're doing.
Cancer.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yep, that'll happen.
Anybody else have any questions?
Have you seen any changes in behavior in the children in the classroom, like incidents of negative behaviors? Or
there's so much more collaboration. All the kids know one another. And I think some of the things we saw, especially early on, one of the things that struck me, especially when the beta group was in second grade, was they were so quiet and still at lunch. It was just the oddest thing because all the other kids, I think what we finally concluded was they were able to move their bodies so much during the day that, when they had some free time, it wasn't the thing that they had to do. And one of the pieces of feedback that we got from that, the initial group after second grade that we weren't expecting just because we hadn't thought of it, their number one favorite thing about the learning studios was, and to quote one of the students, I have the chance to have 95 friends instead of just 25 friends. And I think that knowing one another, you talk about integration, there's absolute integration across our grade level. And because of that, I think that there is less conflict. And when there is conflict, it's there, the teachers are there, it's out in the open, and the teachers are there so that there are enough staff in a given place that the teachers can take care of it. So the students don't necessarily have to be sent out to have someone else mediate. One of the co-teachers can take over, or is there supervising the students while a teacher that is working with the kids can take them out into the hallway and work on it. And so there's so much more flexibility in that way. So, behavior data being what it is, what I can say is the feel of the classrooms and the knowledge the students have of one another and the relationships. I know you have some experience with your daughter. There's some strong relationships among kids in those studios, among unlikely kids because of the integration that's happening.
My daughter's actually in the beta group. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
And one of the other things Wendy Friedmeier and I looked at were students with special needs. They're directly integrated into the learning studios, and because of the way that the gamma and alpha and beta spaces are laid out, there is no need in some cases to pull special needs students out. They can work directly integrated with teachers at any time. And when I was there doing research and observation, I could not tell any differences.
Yeah, because we do have 3 Setting 3 programs at North Park, and our students, especially 2 of them, one of our DCD Setting 3 programs, and then also our autism program, they're able to spend more time with their peers in the general classroom because they have options when they're in the classroom. When you're in a traditional classroom and you're overstimulated, you really only have one option, and that's leave the classroom. Whereas when you're in a learning studio, you have many different types of spaces to choose from. And for instance, in the 5th grade studio, which was a second grade studio. We have the cave, and the cave is always quiet. There's lighting there's track lighting that they've been very ingenious with how they use it. So it's a very calming effect for kids, and kids are able to use it at any time. And it's really it's a space where kids often go to decompress. And so we do see, especially with some of our special needs kids, especially the kids with ADHD, they're really able to attend a lot more consistently in the studios.
There's nothing else. Thank you, and thank you for being patient.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, may I say one thing? As they leave, I want to remind the board that we've had this research piece, and so then on the 23rd, what we'll do is circle back and take a look at how this research piece is applied into the footprints of the facility planning for North Park. And so at our next school board work study, there really will be only 2 agenda items on it, so we can give adequate time and you can still get home before bed. How does that sound?
Perfect.
Perfect.
Which kind of leads us to our next item, which is policy in the 200 series, which I believe is on the next work session as well. And there's an amount of time that's allowed for that. The next one, policy and signatures. Conversation came up and was decided to be brought to the board to have at least get thoughts churning about it, not necessarily looking for decisions this evening, but the 200 series is directed specifically to the board. And Member Palmer had asked about, and she can certainly speak to it, but what the board's thoughts were on physically signing, the board members physically signing off on the 200 series policies, whether it be all of them or ones that are specific to, I could certainly run through them, but, you know, code of conduct or if there's an internet piece or whatever. But that's what was being brought tonight, was just, to get the ball rolling, get the thoughts talking about that. And certainly discussion can be had, but we'll be spending some time specifically going through the 200 series at the work session. And maybe that might even be more as we go through each one, kind of the nitty gritty of it. Yeah, that's one that I think that would be important to or not to, but that was kind of, I think, the intent of having it come up tonight was to get the thought process started, and any comments that somebody might have at this point.
I'm just wondering, what would be the purpose of signing?
Well, I attended several workshops regarding, I guess, governance and self-governance issues with the boards. And actually, it was kind of a suggestion that apparently some boards have adopted, where you get together and you agree as a group that you have read certain things. I mean, there's certain policies like internet policies and so on, where you have to sign off on them. And then if we agree as a group to do our best to abide by these policies, then we can discuss, how we would address them if any of our policies that we mutually agree upon are violated, and how we're going to govern ourselves. That was kind of the gist of it. So this was just bringing it forward so we could get some input and then maybe discuss these policies individually at in more detail at a work study. I didn't expect to see it on the agenda for tonight, so, because there's a lot to go over here.
And presented it as kind of get you thinking
everybody
about it, and maybe there is no reason to, Ted, or,
Yeah.
maybe there is. No, I know, but that's kind of those types of questions are the conversations to be had. I mean, I guess my personal opinion, whether I sign the 200 policies or not, I consider myself, held accountable to those policies. I don't have a problem putting my name on it to put a physical ownership to it, but it was just Laura had said after she attended some of those classes was a conversation she wanted to have. And like I said, I don't think she was expected to necessarily be an information item tonight, and that's why we can talk about it as long as you want, but I think in the work session when we have those conversations, it's a piece that maybe keep in the back of your mind. Is it necessary? Would we want to do it? That kind of a thing. And that's really all this was for tonight. Yes.
And I was just going to say that the reason the policies were put in their entirety is so that you'd have an opportunity to review them prior to the work study that we'll be having, so that you're not hitting them cold. You'll know what they are.
And you said next week, right?
The 23rd.
Thank you.
Yeah, and another thing is this, some of these policies are developed, directly, by us, and some of them are governed by lawsuits and state law and things like that. So one of the considerations we might want to have is issues where we could be violating some sort of a statute or a law, and we may want to consider, just maybe even just more emphasizing this in our training and on a yearly basis. So there's a lot of different ways we can go with this. But I do think we need to discuss this.
Thoughts at this point?
Fair enough.
Next up. You're up.
I'm up. This is great, because if I'm up, this is all about you. So for those that are in the viewing audience, the Columbia Heights Public Schools join school districts throughout the state to salute their local educational leaders during Minnesota's annual School Board Recognition Week, which runs from February 15th through the 19th. And this commemorative week is really designed to recognize the contributions made by all school board members, but particularly, in my view, the Columbia Heights School Board members who are charged with governing public education under state law and in this district. Our deepest appreciation is really extended to all the dedicated men and women who make it possible for local citizens to participate in the education of our community, but specifically to each and every one of you at this table, whose commitment and civic responsibility make local control of public schools in our community possible. And those members tonight are Ted Landwehr, John Larkin, Molly Lewis, Lori Palmer, and our newest member, Natty Severson. I would like to, although we are small in numbers at this point, but large in appreciation, please join me by saying thanks to our school board members during the Minnesota School Board Recognition Week by giving them a strong round of applause. Now, that is not all, because
we get cookies.
Each and every one of you at your place has a cookie. It's a thank you cookie. We would like to say that they were freshly baked by Dawn and I, but that is not the case. You can hear her laugh from over there. But we do have certificates for those of you that have served, because it's for years of completed. But for Natty, it's congratulations cookie for the 3 hours now that you've been on the board.
Better now.
So, I'm going to call you up and recognize you for your years of service. And we have a certificate that was sent to us by MSBA and that acknowledges your years of service. Like that okay. So the Minnesota School Boards Association really says February 15th through February 19th is School Board Recognition Week. And the Minnesota School Boards are going to honor each and every one of you, and I'd like to start with John Larkin. John Larkin, I'd like to thank you for your dedicated leadership as public education, continuing to serve our children. And you are now completing 3 years of public service as a school board member. And this is from January 13th through January 16th in the Columbia Heights Public Schools. Congratulations, John. Next up would be Member Ted Landwehr, who is also being recognized, and for his years of service, he has 11 and a half years of completed service. July 1996 through December 2000, and January 2009 through January 2016. Congratulations. Next up, we have Member Molly Lewis. And this thanks Member Molly Lewis for her dedicated leadership on the board in public education and her continuing service to children. And Molly has completed 1 year of completed service, serving January 2015 through January 2016. Congratulations. And last, but certainly not least, is member Laura Palmer, that we'd like to thank for the same dedication to leadership in public education and continuing service for our children in this district. Laura has completed 5 years of service starting January 2011 through January 2016. Congratulations.
And next year, I won't be last, because we go in alphabetical order.
And again, a special congratulations to Natty Severson, our new member, and she has her cookie. So let's give her a round. Thank you, one and all. That concludes our presentation.
Cool. Thank you. And thank you for baking those cookies, Don. Appreciate that. I was wondering where you were when you saw you walk out. I was wondering what you were doing. Now I know. So. Next up is board topics. Anybody have anything for board topics?
I just want to bring up, I think a couple of us forgot to mention we were also at the canvassing meeting prior to this, so
Yeah, there was.
for the record.
And you were at the candidate forum too.
Right,
Yeah, I
right.
think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are a couple policies I'd like to look at. I noticed as we brought up policies tonight, 714 is a fund balance policy, and it says at the end that we're supposed to review the sufficiency of the minimum unassigned general fund balance level each year, annually. So I don't remember doing that, but maybe we can get enlightened
I'll
on that.
respond to that. We have, and we're planning on doing that again. It usually comes up in the 700 series when we do it in the subcommittee. And it's going to be a particularly interesting topic this year because we've talked in the prior year about perhaps raising the fund balance. And so Director Holmgren is planning on bringing that in the 700 once we start our subcommittee again.
Great, thank you. The other policy I saw was to review the mission statement. We're supposed to be doing that annually as well, I believe, in the policy. I don't have it with me, but.
I think, I don't have it with me as well either. I think that we review it by moving through it, but I think the actual life of the mission statement is between 5 and 7 years.
Right.
And so it was adopted in 2011, and so in 2016 or beyond, the board, and particularly when it gets new members, which is another condition of that policy, should take a look at it and certainly take a look at it with the community. It has been on our schedule to address in 2016. Usually you start that when you have a full board and you have a process. And so I would think we'll talk about that as you as members of the board, and it would probably be something that we would start in the fall of 2016.
Fantastic, thanks. One other thing, and I don't mean to belabor anything, but I've had some community members talk to me about transportation needs. And I don't know if it's best to address this as a board or just individually talking with you, Superintendent Kelly, but students having to cross 44th Avenue and a dangerous situation there, as well as students that I've been told have been more likely to go to Fridley because of transportation is easier to get to Fridley schools than our school. So just want to bring those topics up as possible things to think about.
Thank you, and if you have additional information, you can certainly give it to me, and we can discuss it in management team.
Okay.
And we are in the process of looking at some recommendations to the board on what we might be doing with some transportation changes anyhow. So those would be good things to be brought up at this time of year because we are planning for next year. So thank you for those comments.
You're welcome, you bet.
Okay. 2 things, unless you have anybody else.
That's all.
Okay. Just FYI that the superintendent's evaluation is probably past due, but certainly one that we want to address. So in conversations, the discussion was, and were you part of it last year? We did the monkey survey. Well, HR will send out it's for last year, so you would not be seeing the survey, but evaluation will be sent out via the monkey survey, and hopefully, I think the goal is to have it out by the end of February. And once the information is compiled, then we would sit down as a group, have any additional comments or questions, and then move forward with presenting that to the superintendent. So just look for that in your emails for something coming up in the near future. And then the only other thing I have is just an information item, and it's probably well, maybe geared towards parents. It's supposed to be towards kids, but towards parents. The City of Peace, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's a group that's connected with the City of Columbia Heights, and they do what's called the City of Peace Awards. And what they do is each year is they're looking for nominations for people that, it's organizations, businesses, and individuals that you would think exemplify peace. You make a nomination, there's a selection committee, and then there's, this year, the banquet is actually scheduled for September 11th, where they would present the awards. This is the third year that they're doing this, and this is the first year that they've been able to provide scholarships. And what they have is they have three $1,000 scholarships that are specifically earmarked for Heights students. And I know that you guys probably saw something that was in our board packets. I believe that's where this actually came from. So you're familiar with that. I just wanted to maybe get the word out there, and hopefully get the kids thinking. And if not the kids thinking, then the parents motivating the kids to take advantage of that. This community is famous for their generosity when it comes to scholarships for our students, and this is just another example of another group that's working to get this type of thing back out to the kids. So I just want to make sure I got a chance to mention that. If you have additional questions, you can certainly give me a call, or if you have questions, I'd be happy to fill you in greater detail as far as what the City of Peace Awards are all about. But the scholarship thing I wanted to get out tonight, so that's all I have.
I should mention on the superintendent evaluation, I do have a rubric that I attended a whole seminar on evaluating superintendents and how to make that more meaningful for everyone, put on by MSBA. I would be happy to share those materials in the board update if the board would like that.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, with that said, this isn't necessarily a normal length of a meeting, but welcome to the school board.
Thank you.
And we'll adjourn the meeting at 9:52.